Testing. Yep. Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started here. We have a quorum. My name is Steve Price. I'm the president of the Cranston City Plan Commission. Like I said, we have a quorum. We'll get started. So I'll call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. I'll ask my colleagues if we would continue this to this next month. The reason is that the minutes came to us late today. I haven't had a chance to review it. I know there's a couple of typographical errors from my preliminary review of it. So if I could have a motion to continue the approval of minutes next month, I'd appreciate it. Moved by Vice Chairman, Vice President Coop, seconded by Commissioner Mancini. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of continuance signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Next on the agenda is extension request. The extension request is related to Champlain Heights. Is the applicant here and wishes to be heard on the Champlain Heights extension?
Hello, good evening. Everyone can hear me? Vanessa Azar from Moses Ryan on behalf of the applicant. As mentioned, we are here for an extension of this approval. Just to give you a little bit of background, this almost works as like a phased development with what some of you may have seen as the Champlain Hills project. We were here either last year or the year before updating that project. Since then, we've been working with planning to get that project to the finish line of final plan. These two work in tandem in the sense that the approval for Champlain Hills included some affordable units that are actually going to be built in this Champlain Heights approval. It's all multi-fam residential housing. So maybe looking back, we should have done it as a phased project, but for whatever reason, it's two separate approvals. So while we work with planning to get the first phase to final plan, we would ask for an extension so that this portion of it remains active. This is about 152 units over in the Situate Ave area. So we represent that there's good cause for the extension. We just went back to DEM to get a new permit from them, and we kindly asked for another year to continue work on this.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. R. Are there any questions from my fellow colleagues to Mrs. R about this extension? Does staff have any opinion at this time other than to grant the extension? Thank you. Seeing nothing else, is there any public comment on the extension? Any public comment online, Mr. Lima? Okay. The only reason I'm moving this fast, people, because we got the audio by 10, and there's a lot of you, and so I want to hear all of you. So that's why. Okay. There's no further discussion, no questions. I'll entertain a motion to on Champlain Heights. Motion to grant extension made by Vice President Coop, seconded by Commissioner Exter. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Next is Vaughn Lane. Let's start out by having the applicant like to come here and make their application. Then we'll hear from staff and then have public comment.
Good evening again, everyone. Vanessa Azar from Moses Ryan on behalf of the applicant. What we'll do for this project is I'll give you guys a little bit of an overview. We have our team here with our engineer from Decrete. They'll also give you a little bit closer look at what's being proposed, and we'll go from there. So the applicant for this project is 777 Main Street LLC. The project's on Vaughn Lane, also Main Street area. Assessors Plat 30. It involves lots 83, 84, 85, and 258. The total site is about 91.5 acres, and we're proposing what is known as a residential planned district on this site. The proposal is for 44 lots for single family houses. For everyone who, just to give a little bit of very high level of what we'll call the RPD, which is the residential plan district. Essentially, open space is set aside and the lots are somewhat condensed down so that you can preserve some open space. You can still never do more lots than the yield plan shows. So here, like I said, we're proposing 44 lots, which will be on approximately 30.5 acres with preservation of, up to about 55 acres of open space, of which 40 acres are usable. So let's talk about the site a little bit. There are some wetlands on this site, and it also has a somewhat unique condition. I'm not sure if it's able to get a plan up here, but essentially there is an easement that runs through this property to get everybody kind of familiar. So we had some design constraints. That's why it's a particularly good candidate for this RPD. And so the lots have been somewhat condensed down. That was the traditional yield, and then this is what was proposed. There are some street extensions proposed with this. Vaughn Lane and Winnie Street, and then there'll be the creation of 2 more streets with cul-de-sacs on them. From the legal perspective, like I said, I'll leave the engineering to the engineers, but this is an RPD, which is allowed by right. The lots are zoned both, some are zoned A80 and some are zoned A20. The proposal complies with all that zoning in the context of the RPD. As I said, an RPD is allowed by right in any residential zoning district. And essentially, there's meant to be a public benefit gained from this. I think that this deviation was warranted, and there is a public benefit, especially with the open space and preserving that area, the unique. So this is in compliance with the comprehensive plan, single family residential use, and the density is in compliance with the future land use map. And it meets a lot of the goals of the comprehensive plan relating to natural resources, housing, service and facilities, and land use. There is ongoing coordination with RIDDM and for the wetlands, and also there's to get permitting for that. There's sewer and water availability here, so we're pending final design on that. As mentioned, there's 55 acres that are proposed to be, obviously this is with the caveat that complete engineering needs to be done, but that's the proposal right now to protect the natural resources, and all the master plan standards have been met in the sense of the subdivision. I'd ask Jen Shea from Dupree to give you guys a real overview of the engineering. Recognizing we have a lot of people, we'll try to keep it maybe high level if that works for you.
That's fine. Proceed.
Good evening. My name is Jenna Shea. I'm the project manager from Dupree Engineering, which is located at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island, for the record. I'm here to present the Vaughn Lane Master Plan submission. I'll walk you through a little bit more detail of the existing conditions and then give you an overview of our proposed development. So the project site is located off of Main Street with 2 existing access points off of Vaughn Lane and Winnie Street, which we plan to utilize for the proposed development. The project is zoned A80 and A20. So you can see to the left, there's like a small pocket in the corner that's A20, and then the remaining site is A80. And when we did the proposed development, we did comply with the zone that lot is proposed in. So all of our proposed lots do meet the corresponding zone requirements. The project site does have wetlands scattered throughout. So there is an isolated wetland in the northwest of the site, which is located within AP 30 Lot 8. And then there's other wetland areas and an existing pond located along the entire southern and eastern edges of the project site, which also include a tributary to the Patuxent River. In our proposed development, you'll see that a lot of this wetland area in the southern section of the site has been kept within open space to preserve that area and to ensure that there's no implications or impacts to the wetlands. The project to date has not had a boundary survey, which we plan to provide for preliminary plan submission. We did do a compiled T4 survey based off of a previously prepared Alta survey for the project. So we can speak to these property lines as well. Currently there are a couple lots, as you can see directly in the middle of the site, that are not within our proposed development. So that's AP 30 lots 230 and 259. Those lots are currently accessed via an existing gravel access easement that runs through from Vaughn Lane and then cuts through the wetland area to their property. As a part of this development, we wouldn't propose to disturb or improve this access area. We would only be working within the Vaughn Lane area until it ties into our proposed extension. In order to propose a RPD, which in other terms is a cluster development, we did have to complete density calculations as well as a conventional yield plan. The density calculations actually yielded more lots than we could yield on our conventional yield plan. So on our proposed cluster subdivision, we are only proposing what we could yield on our conventional yield. So on the conventional yield in the A20 zone, we yielded 17 units, and we are proposing on our cluster 11 units. And then in the A80 zone, where we yielded 37 units, and we're proposing 33. The project will propose public roadways with right-of-way widths of 50 feet and a pavement width of 24 feet. And as Vanessa had mentioned, this would include a Vaughn Lane extension as well as a Winnie Lane extension and 2 additional cul-de-sacs. As a part of the RPD requirements, we are required to provide open space, and we have substantially met this requirement. We are providing 56 acres of open space and 40.4 of those acres suitable for development. For this project, only 23 acres are required, with 11.5 of those being suitable. So we start to see those requirements on our proposed plan. And then we also do have water and sewer availability letters that we did receive from CCWA for water, as well as West Warwick Sewer for sewer service. The project site will be accessed by 2 points. So it'll be accessed by Winnie up at the top left corner, and then also Vaughn Lane, which are both existing right-of-ways. We do acknowledge that these right-of-ways, specifically the Vaughn Lane right-of-way, are narrow and I would say not to city standards. And we would be, as part of our proposed development, we would be improving these roadways to, and that's something that we would like to discuss as well. We would be open to doing a primary access from Lane and doing like a secondary access from Vaughn Lane, but we do want to be able to access the subdivision from both access points. But we could use but at that point, I am going to leave off of my presentation. I'd be more than happy to thank you.
Are there any questions? Michelle? The public comment is after the present. Once there's something, let me explain the process for everybody here. So what we do first is we have the application presented. After the application is presented, staff will do a quick overview, and then we will do public comment. Then the applicant will come back and respond to any questions and comments of the public. They will also probably have to respond to questions and comments from the commission. So I just want to understand if you understand the process. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions at this time from the commissioners from this show? Do you have anyone else you'd like to present before we go to staff?
that we do have Paul Bannon here. He's just been brought on after the TRC to address traffic, but he hasn't been fully brought on the project. He's really here to listen more tonight, and as it relates to traffic, but he is here just listening. So no one else to present, and we let you go.
Okay, I'll just ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Right off the bat.
Yep.
On the traffic issue, you didn't do a traffic study there, right?
No, just because it's master plan level, we haven't done any traffic studies yet.
Okay. You talked about the two ways in and out, Winnie Lane, Barn Lane, right?
Yes, sir.
Has there been any analysis? First of all, in general, for me, I don't like a development having only one way of egress and egress and egress. I always say this, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
What is the difficulty with having two fully, like, what's the problem with the Winnie Lane and the Barn Lane two, both fully able to go in and out?
Yeah, so the initial proposal was to have two, full entries and exits out of the two entry points. And as a result, we had the TRC where we got some feedback from staff and also from some of our neighbors who were at that meeting. There's questions that these roadways will need to be improved. Like I said, like was mentioned, their current state is not up to city standards. So when looking at improvements that need to be done, we were trying to be mindful of impacts on the area and thought if it pleased the neighbors and the board, it might be something to be considered. But like I said, we're looking for your feedback. If the feedback is two entries, that's the path we'll look for. But we're here to, like I said, at this master plan stage, we're here to get some feedback and hear from your thoughts. So that's how a little bit of the history of how we got there.
Okay, in regards to, there's a lot of wetlands here. I know you're gonna go through the process. You really haven't discussed how you're gonna deal with runoff that will come from all this new impervious surface. I don't see this is probably just master plan stage, so you haven't done the first study of it. But do you have any ideas of how you're gonna deal with the runoff that will be generated by this project?
Yeah, Jenna can talk a little bit more about it. There are two drainage areas proposed, I believe, on the plan. She can give you a little more detail. As you mentioned, this is master plan, so we haven't fully got there yet, but there are, I believe.
So on the plans, we do show conceptual drainage areas, but as you know, at this level, we haven't really dug into the engineering of the site. We're at the concept layout level. But typically, we handle stormwater mitigation by, we try to do BMP, like stormwater ponds, basins with water quality treatment. And all of it follows the standards of Rhode Island design guide and would be thoroughly reviewed by DEM. And one thing that I always like to note is when we do our analysis, we always have to analyze pre-development. So before the development would be there and look at each design point and where the water is going today and make sure that if this were to be constructed, that we wouldn't have an increase in flow to those specific design points. So that's something that we always do when we design, and it gets thoroughly reviewed by RIDEM as well.
In regards to, I'm not sure the right person to ask, but the open space. Obviously, when you do it this way, you're going to preserve the open space. I think I read someplace, can't remember, like just explain to me who owns the open space, how it's preserved. I think you have something in here about a homeowners association. Could you explain a little bit more in detail about that?
So I'll pick the who maintains it over to Tanaka. But I do also just want to point out that in the city of Cranston subdivision regulations, we are able to put our stormwater basins in the open space as well. So you can see we have our conceptual drainage areas located over there. But the remaining portion of the open space would be remaining in its existing condition for passive recreation use. And I will kick it over to Tanaka.
So as to ownership, the goal would be to create a homeowners association here. So essentially the homeowners association would maintain the open space area, and everyone who owns a lot there would be a member of it. So it'd be kind of like they each own a piece, but in the larger property sense, not that there'll be lots or anything like that. So the homeowner association would be put on record when the subdivision is recorded, and they would have maintenance obligations. There would be maintenance for the space, maintenance for the drainage, and that would be how everything would be cared for, which is permitted based on the RPD regulations.
Right, so, you'll prepare that and then. You know, we'll notify the homeowners association. Not allowed to, property inspection. Pretty standard document, sometimes the conservation. Different wetlands.
You have this big line running through the, this is the Providence Water.
Yes.
Can you explain to me how this, the fact there's a giant easement running through the property, how that's gonna work? You're gonna be able to build a road over it? Obviously you intend to, but how is the process? How does this development work with the fact that you have an easement going through it?
I'm gonna let Jenna speak to that a little bit because she designed with that in mind.
So to date, we have actually met with Providence Water, who owns that easement. It's an aqueduct that is located there. And Dupree Engineering has actually, I've spoken with some of the other project managers as well as speaking with Providence Water. There's just specific design considerations that we need to keep in mind when we do this development. So as you can see in this proposed cluster layout, we've put open space over this easement to eliminate any sort of issues with lots and the easement being in this location. And then we also tried to keep the roadway out of this easement area as to the greatest extent possible. So we've only crossed it 2 times. And then you can see we've crossed it perpendicular, which is one of their requirements. But then as we dig into the engineering, there's going to be continued coordination with Providence Water on this.
So the members of the public can understand some of this talk about master plan, preliminary plan. We are at the master plan stage. This is the initial sort of big concept. A lot of the stuff that's being talked about, the details of where the drainage is going to be, the easements and all this other stuff, how that's going to work at the preliminary plan stage, which then comes back before us, which is also subject to public comment and public hearing. Okay? So I just want to make the reason I'm saying this so that there's a lot of people here so that understand the whole process. So that, you know, if you come up and you start asking questions, some of these questions can't be answered right now. They're going to be answered at the next stage when that comes before us back.
I appreciate that.
Okay. A couple of more questions for me. You know, I tend to ask a lot of questions, but also some of these questions that are coming from the public as well. Because I always have a concern about what I call incompatible uses being next to each other. Okay. So I believe that residential is with residential, commercial with commercial, residential with residential. So to the south of this project is a big purple thing called, it's an M2 to the south. It's an industrial. How close is that industrial facility to a residential house that you're proposing?
I don't know the answer to that. I can look on my plan and get back to you.
Okay, you can just get back. If you'll notice in the map, if you did a couple of maps earlier slides, you'll see a purple M2.
Yep, I know exactly what area you're talking about.
And so what it is to me is like, I don't like building houses right next to an industrial facility, and then people come up and complain 5 years later that they bought a house and a facility. You spoke about this big square in the middle, around the green, like the 1830-259, that?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like that. So you're gonna leave gravel, what did you call it, the road?
So those lots that are located directly in the middle, they're not included in this project.
Right.
They currently are accessed by, so let's see if I can explain, actually, if you could, actually, you can see it there. So you can see it off of Bond Lane, there's like a dirt path that extends over to their lot. And it actually, if you go to our site plan, You can see it cuts through those two isolated wetlands, like right in the middle of those two. Yep, those two right there. So it cuts directly through the middle of those two and then runs to their site. And that's an access easement that they have right now.
What is what is in the square right?
In
Yeah.
in those lots, those are residential homes
There are residential homes right there in the middle right
in
now.
the middle of it. Yeah.
And so their access to the road is through that
Through
access.
a dirt access easement, correct?
Has there been any, I'm gonna say something that's like, I don't know if it's obvious to you, but is there any discussion about connecting those homes to one of the roads that would be created?
We haven't had that discussion to date,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a discussion we could have. We would be, and as you can see on this plan, what we did for the time being is we proposed a stub that would provide them access off of our Vaughan Lane extension to their existing access drive.
Okay. Couple more questions, and I can see if my fellow commissioners have any follow-up questions from what I did. And maybe go to staff and maybe go to public comment. This is probably more directed to the attorney than to yourself. You probably saw there was some public comment from our voter registrar about the post office issue in Bristol. At this point, do you have anything you want to say about addressing the concern about essentially doubling the amount of households in this area that does not currently have access to regular postal service?
Better?
Yes.
Yeah, so as I'll repeat it just so that make sure everyone heard. We did receive feedback on the existing mail issue when we met with our neighbors at the TRC, and then we were also forwarded all the correspondence from the canvasser. It definitely seems like this is an identified issue, and there's been efforts to date to remedy it. From what my reading of what the canvasser had put together, it seems that the U.S. Postal Service holds a lot of the cards, unfortunately. But I think that we definitely want to do what we can to help remedy this issue. If adding units is enough to trigger service, we want to work with everyone so that not only these new houses would have mail service, but everyone who wants it could have it. I know it's gone as far as I think I read that they've gotten Jack Reed involved and still nothing. So this is all said with the understanding that we might not be able to do that much, but the goal would be to help with that issue.
Okay, that's kind of essentially because I think as a developer looking to essentially, like I say, double the number of households.
Yep.
The reason that the post office given that there's not sufficient a number of people there to require a regular postal service could maybe go away at that point. And so I think it behooves you to request service from the post office, regular postal service. And then we can talk about what your response is by preliminary plan stage.
Exactly. I'm not sure at what point, if there need to be public streets officially accepted by the city. We'd look into all the process. I'm not sure if you can request postal service before you have an accepted public road and all those things. But to whatever extent we get some kind of feedback, I think we try and hope that this would be maybe a mass enough of people to move the needle. Like I said, whether anyone's willing to help us before we have public streets, I truly don't know yet, but definitely something we'll explore.
Okay. And the last question that I have is something that's usually not discussed, but I always believe it should be discussed when we talk about housing in schools. Okay. You are on the western side of the city. There are two elementary schools on the western side of the city, Orchard Farms and Oak Lawn. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very close. I've been the school superintendent at an October 10th, 2023 meeting referred to both schools being at capacity and that there may be a need for a middle school. When I look at 44 single-family homes, I see at least a couple of dozen kids. Now, obviously, those 2 dozen kids are not all going to an elementary school. But I wanted to know if you have had made any inquiries, any conversations with the school department regarding A, their capacity at the local elementary schools, and B, how they would address an influx of these many kids into the Cranston local school system on the western side of the city. A lot of times they just say the school system's got enough capacity. They're talking about the entire city. They're not talking about west of 295. So I just wanted to know, A, have you had any conversations, and B, are you willing to have conversations before we get to preliminary plan stage?
I don't believe that any conversations have been had yet. If they have, there's nothing I've been seeing. We'll definitely make a note of that as something to look into.
Okay, thank you. Does any of my colleagues have any follow-up questions on anything at this time? Okay, could staff make I call it a general overview, not giving the recommendation, and then we will then go hear from the public, and then we'll have a chance to respond.
And I'll sit to get out of the way so everyone can see if that works for you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Czar.
I will try to not repeat as much as I've been talked about. So yes, I can introduce myself. My name is Jonas Berteman. I am the senior planner for Cranston Planning Department. And yes, application. As we've already spoken about, it's a proposal for extension. 20 Street and Bond Lane, create 44 lots for single family residential use on around 30 acres, and which will preserve about 55 acres. We looked at the site plan for quite a bit, but something that is seen on this view, you can definitely see down here this industrial lot that we've talked about. That is the off-right mill, and that is the N2 that we've talked about. And we're currently in early talks of a pre-application proposal on self-storage development there, but that is still in the works. Here actually is a very good overview as well as the gravel pathway that we have talked about. One thing that's missing. Oh no, actually, this is actually very recent. This is the house section here. So I will skip over the zoning, but I will briefly talk about the future land use map. Because this also shows that along with the zoning, the future land use map kind of mirrors the zoning in this area. As discussed, also, this is the as part of the RPD, the applicant is required to create a traditional yield plan and then propose cluster development. So these are the two differences here between these two maps. And I also wanted to reiterate something that the developers already spoke about, and it's that the proposal as is at this stage, the master plan stage, does meet all of our zoning regulations and our subdivision and development. They've also greatly exceeded the 25% open space by nearly doubling. Or more than doubling. And they've also exceeded other open space requirements with this development, with this proposal. And also all the proposed roadways that we've seen are also from the right-of-way width to the size of the roadways, all of which I'll talk about a little more later as well, all currently as they are conform to our subdivision regulations. And when it comes to neighborhood consistency, this bill is kind of a more rural, ex-urban area of the city. And it's more of a traditional village. So a lot of the development out in the area predates our zoning code. So while there is a very distinct zoning overlay for that area, really the development itself, a lot of the development there actually does not really conform to our zoning, either because there's substandard lot sizes, frontages, or uses that don't really meet the zone. So it's really mixed bag. What the development there is compared to what the actual zones are, even with the future land use map proposals for those areas. But for the most part, and so that means that in the area, there's everything from single family residential. So it is primarily residential area that it ranges from single family, and there's duplexes, and there's also condo development there as well, particularly mostly along Main Street. Going down Vaughn Lane, it's mostly single family. But generally, the proposal is very much in line, both density use-wise to the surrounding area. Let's look at traffic impacts and access. A lot of this was already discussed, but briefly also wanted to mention that the area that's south of Jackson Flat Road on Main Street, you can see here a little bit more. Jackson Flat Road here. So this area down here, Main Street right here, this is all owned by RIDOT, and north of that is owned by the city. So from the applicant, we would like them, if there's going to be improvements to Vaughn Lane, which is likely on the table. If they're connecting into Main Street, they'll probably need approvals from RIDOT. And otherwise, any improvements to Winnie Street, of course, can be coordinated with the Department of Public Works. And additionally, there will be a part of the preliminary plan review will also be a truck turning radius plan for emergency vehicle access. And additionally, when it comes to the roadways leading into development, and this was briefly talked about, Vaughn Lane does have a 50-foot right-of-way, but currently the roadway that's existing there is less than 20 feet. So if we are proposing, that as a main access point, there will have to be widenings. The paved roadway will most likely have to be widened beyond what it is, and there's very likely encroachments left and right of the paved surface. So if there is going to be widening on there could be that some of the encroached structures, that includes stone walls and possibly some buildings. But currently, with what we have, it's we only have the GIS really right now to show the estimation. The surveys that we have currently from the applicant don't really show what exactly is encroaching. So part of that is what we're recommending is that the applicant identifies, if Vaughn Lane will have to be widened to a two-way access point, which likely widening it to 20 to 24 feet, that the applicant creates a plan that details all the structures in the 50-foot right of way that are encroaching in the easement and may require removal if we wanted to move it to if we wanted to bring it up to city standards. Additionally, we want to continue. There has been some discussion among us to discuss low impact development regarding roadways and stormwater infrastructure. So that includes like that includes a reduction of pavement and green stormwater infrastructure potentially as well. But those discussions are still ongoing. That's currently there's no proposed drainage plans. There's a preliminary plan. So one of our recommended conditions is that the applicant meets with the planning department, DPW, on potential for low impact development prior to the submission of the preliminary plan. Another thing that was just discussed internally as well is that pretty remote nature of the site. So ideally, we would be able to store some of the plowed snow on the roadways. So we're also recommending condition for the applicant to provide location for snow storage on the site. And that should be also for the preliminary plan. Here are some Google View images of Bond Lane and Winnie Street. It shows that currently Winnie Street has 40-foot right of way. Again, we only have like estimated width right now of what exists there. The GIS is not 100% accurate. It can be upwards of 5 feet of the GIS is not fully, sorry, the 40-foot right of way is accurate. The GIS is not fully aligned with the aerial view. So even though it looks like on this aerial view that one of the houses is in the right of way, it might actually just be right on the line. But again, all of that will probably be provided more in the preliminary plan once the boundary survey is provided. This has already been discussed, but again, with the extension of Winnie Street, it will be we will need to require some sort of approval from Providence Water to use to build the roadways on the easement. Yes, and here's a visualization of the 50-foot right of way, and red arrows kind of point to different structures that may be encroaching, but again, we won't actually know which of these structures are actually encroaching until we get boundary survey. And this also really shows that like how small Vaughn Lane is, and currently you couldn't fit two passenger vehicles. Couldn't like pass each other at this point, especially not a fire truck and a passenger vehicle. So if this is proposed as a primary access, we absolutely need to see some sort of widening of that. We also wanted to briefly address this area. So there's a flood, the blue here, that is the 1% chance of 1% chance flood zone, and or it's also known as the 100-year flood zone. And the orange here is the 0.2% chance, or also known as the 500-year flood zone. So this had us a little concerned, but actually, Frank Correo actually reached out to RIDOT, and they reported to us at least that they don't have any reports currently of flooding happening in this area.
We'll be hearing from the public about that. Yeah, I'm
Again,
sure.
this is what we heard from
Yeah.
RIDOT. So we did not talk to residents about this one specifically yet. So from the technical review committee meeting, and general discussions about the site. Drainage has definitely become a key thing that was talked about. We know that the property itself, you see here that the slope, the property is very much sloped downwards, both south and east, so towards the wetlands, but it also also a little bit west towards some of the existing residences there. But as stated, the applicant must maintain, or sorry, the development is required to manage all the runoff that's on the site. So there's actually a potential that the development could decrease some of the issues around hill development, but that will be discussed more when the drainage plans will be presented at the preliminary stage of review. So additionally, there's also proposed roadways will be pretty close to the wetlands, so we'll be seeing wetlands. So we'll be requiring wetlands permits from RIDEM as appropriate, and we'll also need to see appropriate water and septic letters further down the line as well, as it is supposed to be extended. And there is a report that rare species are located on the site, so we know that again, where the exact location of those species are is not known to us. That's only known to RIDEM, so the applicant has to work with RIDEM to see if any of the proposals will potentially impact the species. Moving really consistent with the comprehensive plan. Generally, so all the proposed uses are consistent with the comprehensive plan, single family, and the entire development is, if you're only accounting for the land that is suitable for development, is about 0.57 units per acre, which is very much within the land map designation of 1 units per acre for majority for site. And there's also in the staff memo, there's goals, policies, and actions that generally support the approval of this application. That said, we would also, staff would want to talk about conservation subdivisions. Generally, conservation subdivisions are very similar to proposed cluster subdivision, but promote that the subdivisions cluster even more, and therefore even more open space can be provided, and that length of roadways and utilities can be reduced, and ideally that also reduce construction costs, and then as currently proposed are all public roads, it'll ideally also decrease maintenance costs with city utility providers. And ideally, this would also help move some of the development away from wetlands and properties. Again, a lot of our current regulations, have not changed to really match what's in the comp plan regarding conservation subdivisions. But this is one of the locations, one of the last two areas in this area of Cranston where we'll see these kind of large-scale developments. So one of our last few opportunities to actually use this type of regulation for this project. The staff memo also shows that there's a number of goals. I list in the staff memo also goals, policies, and actions of the comprehensive plan, but also encourage large developments. Exactly, I think this proposal provide affordable housing options, deed restrictions, or just constructing housing options that are lower cost than we see through standard development. Again, I do want to reiterate that there's no mandates that the applicant requires to provide affordable housing for the conservation subdivision, but we certainly will highly encourage it. And I think of both policies and actions in the comprehensive plan. Also highly encourage that. Therefore, we also, highly encourage the applicant. That the applicant provides affordable housing and low-income conservation style development patterns. In exchange, we also highly recommend that the City Plan Commission grant variances to permit condensed development patterns and additional units. In exchange. The recommended density bonus that we have is 25%, which is 11 additional units. In exchange, there'd be 15% or 8 units that would be restricted. Altogether, this would still create less than 1 unit per acre, so and it still conforms with future land use. Additionally, to produce even more surface and to achieve a more condensed development pattern, we also recommend that we would also permit duplexes and townhouses and other style development units on smaller lots to achieve a condensed subdivision pattern while reducing impervious surface.
Okay, are there any questions from my colleagues for the staff at this point before we hand it over to public comment? I think the public's been waiting long enough. They don't need to hear from me. So what I would ask is you come up one at a time and provide public comment. Please state your name and your address when you do so. And you can begin at any moment.
Hi, good evening. Jessica Salter, 6 Lawn Lane. If you can pull up the plan, I'll show you where I am in the middle of it. Okay. Yeah, so ironically enough, due to my accent, I'm in one of those pieces of property shaped like Alabama and Georgia down there. That's my home. Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to hear comments from myself and other neighbors regarding this proposed housing development. We live in Fiskville, obviously, which is the extreme southwest corner of Cranston, bordering both Scituate and Coventry. On the Scituate side of Main Street, it's Hope, and over the Coventry side, it's Harris, and on the Vaughan Lane side, it's Cranston. We're a really small, quirky area. We do not and never have received postal delivery. Most of us do not have city water or sewage. And many of us have found ourselves at many times arguing with Cranston police, city offices, and emergency responders that we are indeed a part of Cranston. However, we're active and concerned citizens and neighbors who participate in public happenings in this area. And many of you have seen some of us here before for other issues. We care very much, not just about this project in our small area, but Western Cranston and Cranston as a whole. I live on Vaughan Lane, the main entry road that is currently proposed for this development. My property directly abuts the beginning of this proposed development. And as presented, the original presentation called for no changes to the existing stretch of Vaughan Lane. And I'm not sure if any of you have ever been to that specific area. Many people are unaware that this quiet rural road even exists. The stretch of Vaughan Lane that the developer is proposing no changes to is currently less than 13 feet wide, not 20 feet as noted in the staff report. It has 2 almost back-to-back 90-degree turns and is lined in many areas with rock walls. It is simply not conducive to serve as a safe traffic avenue for increased traffic. At this point, it barely accommodates a snowplow. However, widening Vaughan Lane to accommodate entrance to this development would require the destruction of historically protected stone walls, as well as the demolition of multiple pieces of private property. And even after that would still include dangerous curves. It's simply not suitable access point. Additionally, there's only one way in and out for homeowners on Vaughan Lane. How will we as residents access our homes during the initial construction phase? It's unsafe and unfair for us to be cut off our homes for possible emergency services during this time. I speak personally, I'm a single foster parent who often cares for children with disabilities and significant delays. I would probably not be allowed to continue to foster children in our home during the construction because I would need quick access to emergency services. Likewise, Winnie Street, a street that merely exists as an access road for Providence Water to get to the aqueduct, has massive drainage issues, which I'm sure you gathered from the laughing in the room. As currently designed, the first part of the road requires a road that seems to be aligned with the aqueduct, and usage of the aqueduct in this way is not consistent with other City of Cranston easement rights for other access points to the pipeline. So we're a little confused as to how this is being allowed for this project. The plan as it currently exists relies on multiple pieces of incorrect information in some areas, and we asked the Planning Commission to urge the developer to find new and different entry points for this development. The land where this development will be built is a wildly diverse, mature forest noted as a national heritage area. It features a forest that is well over 100 years old, and in a way that is uncommon for Rhode Island, offers a mix of varied hardwoods and pine. Because of this botanical diversity and its close proximity to the river, as well as intermixed wetlands, it's a vibrant wildlife habitat. There are black bear, deer, both red and gray fox, bobcats, fisher, multiple species of hawk, both great horned and barn owls. And just last week when walking my dog, I saw a bald eagle. Has there ever been any research about the impact that the removal of this forest will have on the wildlife, many of which I just listed are protected? Given the close proximity of the homes and the cluster type development of the layout, this will almost surely call for a near clear cut of the buildable area. Will there be a wildlife census conducted prior to deforestation? And is there a restoration plan in place? Additionally, Rhode Island General Laws Title 11, Section 41 protects historic stone walls and states that even stone walls in disrepair or neglected condition should not be removed. This map, which I'll pass around, shows the placement of many stone walls within the proposed development area. So the circled area is the proposed development area, and all of those blue markers are identified stone walls. The existing stone walls do not currently align with proposed lot lines, so we asked the Planning Commission to inquire from the developer how they intend to protect these structures and avoid their removal. We know that it will not be convenient, but historical protection laws are in place for the times when not in place for times when protecting them is easy. They exist for the times when it is not. Much of the land currently listed for development is on a significant slope, as noted by the engineer and the planning department. Combine this with the knowledge that this land has significant ledge and the massive deforestation called for in this project, there should be much concern regarding water runoff, especially in an area that already has flooding issues and is surrounded by protected wetlands. We ask that additional tests and research be done at this stage before master plan approval. Additionally, given the ledge and slope, will any blasting be required for these lots? It seems unlikely it could be avoided, and for many of us with older homes, personally my home is over 100 years old, with basement and foundations built into that ledge, the impact of the blasting, or really even any massive scale of construction, could prove incredibly destructive to our private property. Personally, the last time Vaughn Lane was paved, the basic equipment needed for that project caused so much vibration and shaking in my home that some of the plumbing in my basement cracked. Massive construction in this area will have significant impact on existing homes, wells, and sewage systems. The plan as marked highlights areas for conceptual drainage. What is the proposed nature of these drainage areas and why are they denoted as preserved green space when we don't know what they will look like yet? Given other recent housing developments, these drainage areas could be retention ponds. They also could be large gravel pits, as we've seen in some recent housing developments. Each of these conceptual drainage areas is over an acre, and we ask that more information be provided as to the nature of this plan before master plan approval is granted. We as abutters have had less than 2 weeks notice concerning this development. And as noted by the Cranston Board of Canvassers in written submission and the provided materials, and by myself verbally to the planning staff and developers, there are mail delivery issues for this small community that prevented timely notification of the abutters. To put that into context, half of the notifications were mailed to PO boxes, which is the only way that we received mail, and the other half were mailed to physical addresses at which we do not receive mail. The staff opinion on this project was not posted until end of day on Friday. We understand that the current planning staff is understaffed and there are a lot of projects on the table and things are taking longer to review and turn around at no fault of their own. This tight time frame is yet another reason we ask for more time before granting master plan approval. Both you, the Planning Commission, and we, the neighbors, deserve more time to review the details of this proposal before it is granted approval at any level. Also, very recently, a much smaller project in Alpine Estates was shut down due to the concern surrounding the impact that 8 additional units would have on area schools, the same schools that these children from this development would attend, and the impact on traffic in an already established neighborhood with existing infrastructure. We ask that the same level of concern be shown for this project, which, giving planning estimations, could add approximately 50 homes and potentially up to 110 children. Lastly, before master plan approval is considered, we implore the Planning Commission members and staff to visit the site, to actually see where this place is. I have seen Google Map images that are outdated. I have seen inaccurate drawings of this area. I have not heard anyone describe this place in a way that tells me they have been there. I'm happy to host you at my home. I'm the last house facing the woods, so that you may see firsthand the impact that the development will have on this area. As currently proposed, this will be the largest housing development in Cranston in more than a decade. And while we understand that Rhode Island is in need of additional housing, we ask that projects, but especially projects of this scale, move forward with immense forethought and protection for existing Cranston homeowners and residents. We thank you so much for listening to us tonight, and thank you for your thoughtful consideration today.
Thank you. Next person.
Act to follow. I'm Sonia Meisenberg. I own property on 0 Winnie Street, and I live on Roberts Ave. Put the map up. Where Winnie Street comes out, the next street up is Roberts Ave. Before I get started, I would like to say in the minutes, I was at the last meeting and we talked about if there's going to be lasting pre-construction analysis of homes that have wells. But in the minutes, it just says abutters. Take a look at that. We talked about, for instance, my house is not 100 years old. However, my house also sits on the ledge. We have other neighbors whose houses sit on the ledge and have wells. So if we could expand that a little. Good evening. The area being discussed tonight, as was described earlier, as one of the last few areas in Western Cranston where large-scale development is possible. I'd like to take a few moments to talk about the habitat loss and environmental impacts should a large-scale development become a reality. The numerous acres set aside for the developer are generous. They are a lot wetlands. What will be destroyed is the forest. While the wildlife within the wetlands will be adversely affected due to proximity of humans, the wildlife within the proposed forested area of hardwoods, conifers, new and old growth tree stands, and meadows will incur major habitat loss. Trees, as you know, are the effective air filters, filtering gases harmful to humans into the Earth's ecosystem. The deforestation of 40+ acres of trees will release captured carbon back into the atmosphere, eliminate the cool air provided by the shade canopy, and create a massive change within the local environment. Did you know that this particular region is one of 3 areas in the city that has a 60% overall tree canopy? The DEM goal is 50, and there are only 3 in the city that have the 60. This was reported in the Resilient Roadie 2024 report by DEM. Large areas of tree canopies are essential for climate change resiliency, and average temperatures and total annual precipitation increase, we should be including mitigating actions that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and maintain or increase rates of carbon in forests and natural ecosystems. Mitigating actions are those that reduce the conversion of forests to other land uses, such as housing and solar. According to DEM, habitat loss is an ongoing threat to the long-term viability of the American black bear. Their habitat preferences consist of just the type of forests we are discussing here. And yes, there is a bear. They've got a picture of it walking up one way. In addition to the American black bear, this area is home to eastern coyotes, herds of white-tailed deer, bobcats, red foxes, and fishes. Affiliated woodpeckers, American woodcock, barred and great horned owls are a few of the other varieties of avian species that thrive in the area. Jessica and I walk the same route. Native plants and flowers in the meadow support various types of pollinators. It is noted in staff report, Rhode Island DEM's Natural Heritage Map identifies known rare species on this site. It is specifically, the Latin word is Anglonaeus tendifolia. It is a type of foxglove plant. According to the Rhode Island Wildlife Action Plan Department, municipalities can and should choose to prioritize rare species and other important resources, including at the highest level in the comprehensive plan, and then everything that follows from these plans. Ideally, the site should be surveyed for rare species and development designed to avoid and conserve any that are found. In addition to habitat loss, the proximity to human development will take its toll on the animals that do manage to adapt. As we all know, humans will use chemicals to create the perfect lawn, sprinkle poison to eliminate small rodents who will get eaten by the raptors who will ingest the poison and die. Small rodent populations will thrive, large predators will not, and the natural balance of predator and prey will be disrupted, forever changing this vibrant wildlife habitat. You are the managers of this forested area. Your responsibility is to be stewards of communities and respect the concerns and issues stated here this evening. Please consider alternative options that will have less of an impact on this area.
Thank you. Next member of the public.
Hello, my name is Robert Sanson. And the last time I was in front of,
Could you still give us our address?
145 Main Street. And the last time I was in front of the commission was about 20 years ago when I was converting my home, currently a home, was a commercial building into a residential, which was the Fiskville Fire Department. It's a home I'm very proud of. I converted by myself. And within 2 weeks of being there, some random guy shows up and says, "Hey, can I tap your trees?" I'm like, "What does that mean?" And like, "Well, I run the 4-H and we come and we would like to make maple syrup." And next thing you know, I said, "Sure, whatever." 200 white buckets. If you ever driven through Fiskville, which I hope you have, in the spring you'll see white buckets, and it's usually him. And he taps them. And if you've ever go into Dave's Market, you'll see a little blue jug that says Rhode Island maple syrup. There's a good portion of that comes from my backyard, and it's something that they spoke of special trees. They speak of and something that it's that wood that they're going to clear is thousands of maple trees, and that's sad. But it's just, I know progress, blah, blah, blah. But it's one of those things that I can't imagine clearing. These are trees that are 60, 70 feet tall. They're not like little trees. They're gigantic. They're probably 100, 125 years old. They'll just knock them down to put in houses. Now, that being said, I want to kind of move on from them. The one thing that's been talked about is ledge. Now, ledge is something that anyone in Fiskville knows about just enough because their houses shake. Now, did anyone else house shake? Okay, so have they done seismic studies? Has the engineering department done seismic studies? I know, but it's still whatever it is, everyone's house shakes. I would not build a series of properties on a whole land mass that shakes. If I was going to encourage a bunch of people to come in, oh, hey, yeah, new neighborhood, we're building it, but just be known that your house will shake. And it's not like a little bit, it's like all night long, everything in the house, stuff falls off of the walls. It would be something that would be very bad to be encouraging new construction in this. Now, just like people said, there might be some demolition. And so as soon as someone goes in there, they go in with a backhoe, they're going to find out that there is no way. Now, earlier I asked about the sewers. Now, so when I built my house, I was like, okay, so I need a septic system. They're like, well, because you're doing a conversion, you actually, for people on engineering, you understand. They're like, well, DEM says you have to do an above ground system. Well, I had the choice between, like kind of just like buying a new Mercedes or putting in a septic system that is 40 feet long, takes up my whole backyard. Now, the reason they had to do that was because of that water, the aquifer that runs through that whole area. Now, if DEM doesn't allow anyone else to go in there, they're not going to allow the engineers to start digging holes. They're not going to allow anyone tapping into that area because DEM is going to say, we don't think so. Now, back to the septic system. So I was like, well, okay, so I have this above ground septic system that is my whole backyard. And if you don't believe that, then if you see a topo map, you can actually see my septic system from the aerial view. If you dig it up, you'll see it. So I went down to West Warwick, like anyone else would. Like, I'm a new homeowner. Who else goes down to the West Warwick sewer plant? I did. I started making new friends, and I was like, hey guys, like, so can I hook into your sewer? Because that's what the Cranston building said. They're like, well, there's sewer there. And they're like, sure. You've got to dig up, you're going to need about a $5 million bond. You're going to have to dig up the whole main street all the way down past Riverside. It's more than 1.5 miles before you're going to hit your first sewer. So they're going to have to tie into that. Now, is that stuff that we hear about? No, they just, quote unquote, we've got water and sewer all worked out. So, okay, that's something that I would look in a little bit deeper because it's not worked out. Maybe it is, but I can tell you, when I talked to the West Warwick guys, they said our sewer system is maxed right now. We can't keep on doing any more incremental additions. So now you're going to add in another minimum 44 units. Minimum 44 units. I want to be clear on that. West Warwick is not going to say that. Now, back to the flooding, which I'm sorry to chuckle when you showed that map. In 2010, does everyone remember the flood? Yep. Okay. So that whole area where you showed, that was completely all underwater. And as we recall, the West Warwick sewer system overflowed and made the whole area smell horrible. Now, I'm sure they're going to be very reticent about adding anything else to that extra wing. I don't know. I'm not, but all the guys I've befriended over at the West Warwick sewer department were clear they didn't want anything else. Now, is there any way that I can show a picture? Can we add this in?
You could pass it around, sir.
So in this, there is I'm very more about myself than the rest. So I looked at what was directly affecting me, as probably I hope everyone else in here. Look at yourself, because it's such a big map. And if you don't see what's just affecting you, you're gonna not say this. Now, a lot of you guys don't know me. I don't know many of you. I actually have a history. I was an architect, so I know how to read maps. And I have questioned about some of the engineering drawing. I also have the concept of the RPD. A master plan should be following setbacks. Now we have a square that's a building. Now we have a triangle. Now it says we have 1,000 square feet. And in that 1,000 square feet, or I'm sorry, 10,000 square feet, we have a little box. One of them I marked on there. There's absolutely no way they could get a 20% minimum or 20% coverage into a 10,000 square foot area. These maps are not to scale. They're doodled. They're like done. The setbacks are totally inaccurate. 15 foot, 30 feet. These are things that should be on a master plan detailed. Clearly, whoever was doing these should be fired. I'm not believing that they actually submitted this in front of you guys. It's an insult to all of you. What that plan looks like to you is an insult. It's just, I can't imagine. And the concept of the RPD to me belongs in gigantic I mean, it belongs in spaces where you don't have any space to work. The RPD is, in this instance, being misused. We have tiny little spaces being squeezed out, triangles, the 30-foot setbacks, 10-foot, 15-foot setbacks, all a bunch of lies that should be followed to a T, and the engineers like aren't even following them. It's an insult to all of us. Do we agree? Yeah, it's you see these drawings and it's abhorrible. Now, I repeat, I have a background. A lot of you don't know how to read these things. There's other things like you were supposed, and if you look at the plans, yellow dotted line setbacks, they use gray dotted line. That is a draftsman mistake. Why are they doing that? Are they trying to confuse you? Yes, they're doing it on purpose. They want you not to see the setbacks. They want you to like ignore all of this. And
Sir, when you're making your comments, can you make them towards the planning?
oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that there was a requirement for that. Sorry. Anyways, so that being said, I can see that you're looking at some of these drawings. These are just quick red lines. Can I have the first one back? For the commission, I assume you took a look at this, that big circle. I can tell you 6 months out of the year, that is a pool. That is, we have waterfalls that run from there. And that line that I drew, this big blood line, is actually a brook that, as of last week, was 2 feet deep. So we're not talking little bits of water. We're talking rivers. And that's if they start dipping into the ledge, they start cutting into this, the flora and fauna, you are going to see repercussions. These new houses are going to fall over. They're going to run down the river. It's going to be big problems that you can't believe. I know I sound like a tinfoil hat kind of guy, but I'm not. It's something that I've studied. I used to be a surveyor. I understand how all this works.
What is your experience? I don't usually ask this public comment, but you're giving a lot of, like I call it, almost like trying to give expert opinion. So what is the background you have that you're talking about the designs?
I have a degree in architecture, and I worked as a surveyor and also as a planner and as well as a architectural designer.
Okay, thank you.
And so that being said, this drawing also shows there's culverts that go underneath the road. And none of these are actually, I should say, looking this way. None of these are marked on the plans. You'd think that if there was culverts that went underneath an actual major main street, they would actually show those markings, but I guess they're not paying. I know these are preliminary plans. I understand how all that works, but these are big misdirected site. I don't know. I just can't imagine they just skipped all this. There's also other things on here. You talked about scale being issues. I understand that. But what I don't understand is, you see the little doodles of the, on this drawing, and like they just missed that. And I feel bad. Once again, the houses are going to be affected. The neighborhood, Vaughn Lane, that was a really sad story to hear that they're going to actually have to cut out antique structures. That sounds very easy to say, but it's to me, it's just like, I don't know, maybe this village is a village for a reason. And I think everyone who goes down to the post office knocks on the doors, and we know our postal worker by name. They know us by name. And you can go in there and, sometimes you want to look the other way because you just put your head down, but it's part of our village. There used to be Fiskville had a mill, the term of where the village came from. That's no longer there, but there's the meandering river, and it's something that I think should be protected. And I think if you all reviewed these images that I showed, and can I have the other one as well? You will be able to see. I think this is a mistake to let it pass.
All right. Thank you very much. I would, I always believe in giving, let me put it this way. the people who know their neighborhood the best are the people who live there. That's always been my opinion. I've said that regarding other applications. I only ask that all of you try to be a little more concise with your time because you're repeating yourselves a little bit, but more importantly, I have this room till 10 o'clock and there's other people here that have applications too. And so I just want you to be cognizant of it. If I can't get to these people, we have to continue this to another day. Thank you. Go ahead. Your name and your address.
My name is Janet Jabo, and I live at 78 Vaughan Lane. So on
Miss
that,
Jabo, could you
Yes.
hold on 1 second. Yes, I was thinking about that when he took the documents. Once you present those documents to us, they become us from our property. So if you want to go into that room over there, make some copies. That's a good thing. You want to make some copies in the library.
We already took a photograph. They took a photograph.
They took a photograph? Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Jabo. Go ahead.
all right, Janet Jabo, 78 Vaughan Lane, that square over there, well, it's not quite a square, where we're surrounded by everything else that is myself and my neighbor, 259 and 230. All right, I have a right of way on the gravel road that we talked about. The gravel road is in such disrepair and no one fixes that gravel road. The potholes were so bad that it's like driving on an obstacle course to get up and down the road, one car at a time. If someone is coming down, you have to wait at the top, let the other person go up, and then you come down. Right now, that's not a problem because it's just my neighbor and I, and we're very conscious of that problem. On the gravel road itself, there's one spot where you can pull over to let the other car come through. The problem with the road is the sides of the road are higher than the road itself. So every time it rains, the water just stays in the road and the potholes get deeper and deeper and deeper. And no one repairs that road. It's not my road and it's not my neighbor's road, but we pay to have it repaired. And with this development going in, you might think that they could do something for that gravel road, and which they, what I heard, I might be wrong, but they were not doing anything to the gravel road. And that's it. That's my.
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to hear us out. We all live and love in our neighborhood. It's a great spot to be. So my concern tonight is,
Oh, your name and address, sir?
Mike Klitzner, 1410 Hope Road. If you put that map back up. I'm 3/4 of the top from like development all the way to the right green. I own 50 acres from 1410 Hope Road all the way back, and I am the abutter on the top end of this property. My concerns are traffic. The road itself is horrendous, Hope Road, with traffic as it is. Now you're talking about putting an additional 42 units. The only egress, as you say, is coming off of Main Street, the two lanes there. That means everybody's either going to come from Hope Road right by my house or come down 7 Mile Road. So it's bad enough. There's accidents all the time. We had a fire a month ago in the woods. And please, when I talk about our fire department, police department, and rescue, I'm not talking about the men and women that man it. They do a wonderful job with what they have to work with. But I did a little research today, and national response time to a situation from the station on average is 4 to 5 minutes. Our situation on Hope Road, and when I went all the way down to Vaughan Lane, I went from the Situate Avenue Station, it's 4.9 miles. I did it at speed. I was a volunteer fireman for Michelle. I drove the engine. I was a driver engineer. You can do 10 miles an hour over the posted speed limit and still be within reason. So here it is, it's 4.9 miles from the station. The next station that responds to us is Oak Lawn. It's a 12.5-minute drive. is 4.5 miles away. The other one, I'm sorry, that I left out was a 9.5 mile, 4.9 miles, 9.5 minute drive. Garden City would be the backup if these engines were out responding, we were doing another call. Garden City is 12 minutes drive, 6.8 miles away. Station 3 would be another backup station to get help to us. That station is 18-minute drive, 8.5 miles away. According to the NFPA, which is the Fire Protection Handbook Standard 1710, first engine on scene should be within 4 minutes of the call. That's giving the men and women time to dress and get in the truck and head out. Second engine in could be at 8 minutes. EMS, 4 minutes. Critical care, 8 minutes and 6 minutes. These are all things that we don't have right now at present. We had an accident right in front of my house. Car hit a pole, tipped over, 2 o'clock in the morning. Myself and my neighbor were out there with flashlights. Police and fire were nowhere to be found, and a car actually called 911 for him. He extracted himself out of the car. He was sitting on my stone wall. We didn't see him, but it took quite a while. That's a concern of mine, that if God forbid, I said, if this car was in flames, this kid would have been toast. So luckily he wasn't. He was unharmed. The car did its job. Police response time, the national average is 7 minutes from when the call at 911 is lodged. That doesn't happen. It just goes on and on and on. You have to wait 15, 20 minutes before an officer shows up. There are, as far as I know, there are only 2 officers. One of the women used to date a Cranston cop that was at my barn, so I got to know him very well. And he said there are only 2 officers at any given time that patrol this area. And it takes them forever. And if one of them has to go back to the station to fill out a report, we have 1. So that's not enough coverage in my opinion. Police response time is not good. Fire and rescue was not good. As I mentioned, we had a fire behind the houses on the Lower Current Reservoir the other day. Again, nothing against the men and women that man it. They couldn't find it. I finally came out of the house and said, what's going on? They said, we have a fire at the reservoir. So I said, my neighbor's house gives complete access, drive the truck right there. So they stopped at the end of her driveway, they walked in, and then they had to wait for additional equipment. It wasn't available. Then once they figured out they were right on the banks of the lake, the reservoir, they requested a floating pump, which did the job, but it took a half hour for that pump to get there because they had to get the Humvee. Then they had to go to another station to get the pump. We need another station. We need a substation. We need something up in that area. You're going to increase our density with 42 homes. And that's a lot of people that have injuries. And I also see that you're tiptoeing around the viaduct, the aqueduct rather. That was put into use in 1926. Now, as Cranston residents, you remember not that long ago, right about below the Cranston Rotary, they had to rescue the senior citizens out of that home that's right there because the density, the amount of volume that came out of there devastated that area and flooded that entire property to where they had to use to get these people out of the houses as before they were done. So that pipeline was put in 1926 and it's sitting there and you're going to cross it. You're going to do construction next to it. And here we were not that long ago. Some of you members were here when we were here defending this property because of solar. They wanted to clear cut 37 acres of it and just destroy it. And here we are back again, trying to save this piece of beautiful land that's ours in and around ourselves, and we live on it, and the animals that are there, and everything that's all about it. But here it is, you're only saving the wetlands because you can't build there. Some of the houses on the left-hand side where that small green area is, the lots extend into the wet area. I'm like concerned. I know I have a brook, and I was told when I wanted to do something for my son on the property, I had to have over 400 feet away from the stream. That eliminated a lot of things I want to do to an existing house. But here it is. You've got this, and like I said, you're tiptoeing around a lot of things, and this is going to put an immense amount of traffic down Hope Road. We don't have the services. The road is not maintained. There's a lot of heavy truck traffic, and I can't imagine the construction vehicles going by my house to deliver gravel, concrete, moving the heavy equipment. I hope one day nobody gets hurt, but I hope the small bridge that's just below my house goes across Springbrook Stream collapses because they ignore the no trucking. There's no police presence there. The only time you might see him, and probably some of you guys got pinched, but there's the cop does speed checks. Okay, there you go. Somebody got pinched, but police presence, again, nothing against the force. It's not there. They don't have enough manpower. Everybody's undermanned. And here we are, we're gonna put 42 homes, kids in school. We need a fire station. We need new apparatuses. It's not gonna be, I feel as if it's not gonna be viable for the city to put up all this infrastructure to support this unit the way it's designed. And I just wish that we could all take a better look at it and talk about it and design it so it works. And it's, not gonna do what it's gonna do to our environment that we all chose to live in. I've lived there since 1982. I bought additional land. I own 50 acres now. It's a beautiful piece of property. And as Jessica said, she's on the bottom end down there in Alabama. I'm up in northern New England there. Anybody is more than welcome to come by. And I'd love to give you a walking tour because I can get to Jessica's house on the trails that the ladies that board at my farm ride their horses on. That's about all I got to say tonight. Thank you.
Okay, next member of the public.
Good evening, President Price, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Nick Lima. I'm the Registrar Director of Elections for the City of Cranston Canvassing Authority. In my official capacity representing the Cranston Board of Canvassers. The board has no position, of course, on this project. I'm here because, as you mentioned, President, there is one issue only that we do have concern about, and that is the current lack of normal household mail delivery for residents of Fiskville, and the possibility that up to 44 houses could be constructed that the USPS may also designate as a non-delivery area, which would exacerbate existing problems. I'm not going to reiterate everything that I provided to the commission in our written testimony, but I will say I've walked this neighborhood, I've talked to residents, I've heard the horror stories about the E911 call issues over the years, the mail being rerouted around the country, difficulty making commercial transactions online. God knows, trying to get a delivery to a house that many commercial databases don't even recognize exists because the USPS does not recognize it exists. Our office obviously has an interest in this because everything we do in elections is through the mail. Official election mail is recognized by the USPS. It's allegedly supposed to be prioritized by the USPS, although we frequently have issues with that. Every time a voter registers to vote, updates their address, changes their name, updates the unit number, we have to send an acknowledgement notice, a change notice, a letter in the mail that has to be received by the voter. If it's not, it's returned to us as undeliverable. That makes the voter inactive, and that disenfranchises that voter. Mail ballots have to get to a voter's address. They are non-forwardable under Rhode Island state law. Our office, the Secretary of State's office, have had to hand deliver mail ballots to residents of Fiskville before because the U.S. Postal Service will not deliver them. Of course, we also have our voter information mailers that let residents know what their polling location is. We have to send those out for every election under state law. Again, those are often returned en masse undeliverable to our office. Obviously, there are concerns not just for elections, but for other city departments. And for those reasons, our office has worked since 2017 to try and convince the Postal Service to change their policy as it pertains to Fiskville. We've talked to the local post office in Fiskville. We've talked to the whole postmaster. We've met with the Providence postmaster on College Street. We've met with the Rhode Island, Massachusetts district manager, the Northeast regional manager, and the national coordinator for election mail. And we've also appealed and met with the U.S. Postmaster General's office. When all those appeals were denied, we didn't involve, as was mentioned by the applicant, U.S. Senator Jack Reed, who spent months trying to get the USPS to respond. After that lengthy period, they finally did respond and just reiterated everything that they said prior to that. So when we exhausted our options as a city department, we appealed to the city council. Commissioner Renzulli was on the council last year. Council President Marino was in the audience as well, both co-sponsored, along with the entirety of the rest of the council, a resolution to the Postal Service officially requesting on behalf of the city the establishment of regular mail delivery for the residents of Fiskville. That was 14 months ago. The U.S. Postal Service has not even bothered to respond to the city council, to that official resolution and communication. So when we did not get a response after a few months, I engaged the Rhode Island Secretary of State, Greg Amore, and asked him to send a letter in his official capacity as a state general officer. 4 months later, the regional director of the post office did respond to that letter, copy pasted all the denials from earlier, and just moved on. So if we've done all this already, why are we here tonight talking to the planning commission? This project hits the reset button on that process, because we're not just talking about the current residents of Fishkill, we're talking about for prospective future residents of this neighborhood and potentially doubling the size. And again, we have no position on this project whatsoever in any other capacity, but whether 4 houses get built or 40 houses get built, our interest is confined solely to wanting those residents to have normal, regular delivery so that their rights to vote are not disenfranchised. And to that extent, I'm not a planner. No one in my office is a planner. We don't have any expertise in this matter. But if there is any tool in the toolbox for the planning commission, the city planning department, or the applicant, we would ask that those tools be used. It could be a sledgehammer. It could be a screwdriver. You may not have a tool legally at all. I know you cannot compel the USPS, just like we cannot compel the USPS to make a decision. However, we have found in other areas of both Rhode Island and the country where similar non-delivery areas have existed in the past, sufficient political pressure has succeeded over time in convincing the USPS to change their policy. So that's the only issue I want to bring into the attention of the Planning Commission. I hope that as this project moves forward in any way, that this is kept in mind as one of, obviously multiple points of consideration. I thank the commission for their time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Lima. Any other member of the public that'd like to be heard? Name and address?
Hi, my name is Michael Camardo, and I'm the homeowner at 1 Vaughn Lane. You pull into Vaughn Lane off of Main Street. My house is right in front of you. You can drive right straight through my kitchen. I have many concerns which have been addressed as far as the environment and the traffic and things like that. One of the slides that was shown earlier with the red arrows, what could be affected by the widening of Vaughn Lane. My house was right there. Anyway, all of those would be affected, not some of them. The road would have to be significantly widened, and structures would have to be removed, possible stone walls. And I take care of the property that goes around Vaughn Lane and starts to go up by Jess's house and the greens. I take care of that property as my own. I mow the lawn over there. I take care of any if any limbs come off, creating a hazard, I remove them. And I know that the easement moves in on that. And I believe myself and others on Vaughn Lane would have a claim to adverse possession for that. The other thing I just wanted to address is that you mentioned the elementary schools. There's one elementary school, that's Orchard Farms, and Hope Highlands is now a middle school. So that's something that needed to be corrected. And also, when you do call for a police or fire or rescue, it takes a bit to come down through Situate Ave, 10, 15 minutes. It's a lot. So thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. That's all.
Thank you. Next member of the public.
Jan Rania, 1410 Hope Road. No, not 1410, that's my neighbor. 1439. All right. So I have a few concerns. This gentleman who just came before me, Michael, he did address he straightened out that there is only one elementary school in that area, and it's Orchard Farm. I looked on their website, and they say that the ratio of students to teachers is 16-1. From what I hear, there are 25 students in a classroom. At 44 houses with an average of 2.5 children per house. And I wouldn't expect that they'd all go into elementary school, but probably a great deal. But that would be 110 new students in our area. That's a lot. And I don't know how the schools will accommodate them with, obviously they'd have to hire new staff, new aides, new teachers, new lunch ladies, new everything. And from what I hear, the building is overcrowded as it is. There's also the issue of busing, creating new bus routes and all the expense. I'm not looking forward to my taxes going up for this project. And I would like to be convinced before this is approved that we're not running this in a deficit. I live on Hope Road, right across from Mike's farm. And the traffic on that road is horrendous. There are constant accidents. There are cars that land in my yard. They bounce off my trees, land in my yard. They come around. It's like an S-curve where we live. And they land in his yard, down in the horse paddocks. And it's pretty common. Again, the response time is, whatever it's going to be, because that's just the nature of it. But it's pretty slow. I would hate to live up on Bourne Lane in an area up there and have to wait for fire or police. Very infrequently do we see police in that area. I've asked the speeding on Hope Road in that section, particularly between Lippet, Burlingame, and then 7 Mile down the bottom, is the speeding is terrible. So many times I've almost been hit. I am disabled. I'm a little slow, but just trying to cross the road from the farm to my house is very dangerous. And to increase traffic, if there are, 50 houses with maybe 2 cars per house, and my road, my little road is the way to get to Route 37 and the highways. That's, at least 200 cars minimum per day speeding up and down my road. It's very, very concerning to me. I had asked the police to put somebody in my driveway to stop speeders at one point, which they were not happy to do. And a gentleman came and sat and he stopped 9 people. First, he said to me, "I'm not stopping anybody going under 45. It's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit." He said, "I'm not stopping anybody going under 45 because that's just ridiculous." He stopped 9 people in 90 minutes and gave them tickets and said, "I'll be back." But he didn't come back, but that's how concerning it is. I'd love to see them there consistently. I would love to see a speed bump, which is in that comprehensive plan. But it's just too dangerous. And to increase, we're not in the little fiscal area. We're in Hope on Hope Road. And there's a big concern for us too. If this had come out to Lippet Avenue and gone that way, it wouldn't have affected our crazy little strip of road as much, but apparently that's not an option. I wonder if there's going to be, historically, there have been a lot of Native American development, areas in that area. They typically would put encampments near the Patuxent River, which is right across the street from where this development is. And of course, they would try to be higher than the river. I want to go down that flood route again, but so I'm concerned that there might be some evidence of that, and I would hope before this is approved that there's a plan in place to make sure that nothing is disturbed and everything is preserved. I also have a question about the sewers that I would like cleared up, because I'm a neighbor, but on the other side. And if they're bringing sewers in and it's part of Cranston, are the abutters and the neighbors going to be required at their own expense to hook up to sewers? Because that's a big, big expense. And no. Okay. I lived in Warwick for a time and you were required to hook up. So at $30,000. So I don't want to go through that again. So that's good to know that that's not the case. Thank you. And I do have another question about all this open space that's being preserved. Is that wetland? And is that what it is that we're heralding as, the great open space that we're going to preserve? And is it going to be, swamps to hold mosquitoes, but is that the open space, or is there a conscious effort to just create open space and not just, we can't build on it anyway, kind of open space? So those are my questions that I would just like to see addressed before this is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next member of the public.
My name's David Meissen of 0 Wing Street. I live on Roberts Ave. I'm going to be real quick. Much of what I had to say has already been touched on. The pictures that I'm sending around, pictures of Arkwright Bridge. I believe in 2011 it was closed to vehicular traffic, and then again in 2014, fences were put up behind the barriers in an effort to stop foot traffic on the bridge. When the kids came down and scaled the fences and began to jump in the water, neighbors in the area called the police and said, we're concerned about this. Police at that time said we did not have the resources. So I just wonder if we don't have the resources to police 30 kids 3 months of the year. What's the plan to police 34 year homes and the traffic and everything else that comes around with that 12 months out of the year, 365 days, 24 hours a day? We have to consider those things before we jump into something. Thank you.
Thank you. Next member of the public.
Kirk Rarick, 264 Main Street. I want to be clear, my house is in Situate, but I do own Cranston from the property. A couple of things. I'd like this to be environmentally conscious and socially responsible project. I've only been able to look at this project in the last 2 years. First, I'd like to touch on the land itself. I've lived across the street from this, where Winnie dumps on the Main Street. I live across the street. I walk my dogs there for over 20 years, and I can tell you that it's not a little wet over there. Strangely enough, I have a picture of my dog standing in the river on that property. Can you bring up the picture where it shows Winnie Lane, but a you had a map that was just almost of Winnie Lane. So this shows Winnie Lane. The first two, as you're driving into Winnie Lane, the first two properties on the right are homes. Right after that, there's a gate. After that, it is all gravel. Providence Water Supply has had a big problem with that water coming down that hill. They've always had to come every year, fix that hill, bring in stone, bring in mats, because there's so much water. That picture of that dog is standing at the top of that hill where it turns, the Providence Water turns, and there's water at the top of that hill coming down. There's a bunch of water. Also, I'd like to bring some consistencies that were brought up. They talk about utilities. So it says on the pre-engineering, it says utilities, public water services proposed and will be provided by Kent County Water. If you go to the Kent County Water letter, it says water service will be made available contingent upon the ability of the system to meet the project's demands. So there's an inconsistency of what the pre says, what Kent County Water says. Also, on the bigger map, we bring up the bigger map where it shows the wetland. Yeah, right there. Everything that's in green, the reason they're saying they're not going to build on that Everything over there is super wet. And they're saying they're gonna make it open space. It's not open space. They can't build on it because it's that bad. There's a river that goes through on the right-hand side, that goes through all of that property and comes out next to, it's not Arkwright. What's the property? Arkwright. It comes out to the river next to Arkwright and goes across the street. There's a ton of water over there. There's a lot of water on that hill. And also, I just want to touch on the last thing. We talk about the police, the fire. I've lived there for 22 years and nobody's lying. It is that bad. When you call, I've called Cranston Police. I stopped because I worked at the railroad and I go into work at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'm driving at 3:15 in the morning on Hope Road, right next to Mr. Klitzner's house. Somebody was trying to break into a house. I stopped. I called the police. I told them exactly where it was. They never came. I finally got out down there, Phoenix Avenue, before you get on the highway, and I stopped the cop. I'm like, are you looking for that break-in? He goes, yeah. I go, it's all the way at the other end of Hope Road. I feel like we're the forgotten part of Cranston. And everybody will agree. It's any kind. I had called the public utilities, the public works, because as you come down Main Street and you take a left to Jackson Flat, that is a DOT road. Somebody mentioned that Main Street is DOT road. It is not. At that stop sign coming down the hill on Main Street, there's a no through trucking sign. I've approached Cranston. I've called them several times. And I've asked about the trucks that come up the hill, come down the hill. What can we do about this? And I basically was told, call the police. Can I put a bigger sign so the trucks stop coming up the hill? It's really bad. It's all supposed to be no through trucking in Western Cranston. It's really bad right now. And I've called them in the last 2 months before I even knew about this to stop the truck traffic. And now you're going to add 40 homes. The traffic is going to be 10 times worse. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? We're almost at about 8:28, so be cognizant of that. Any other public comment?
Good evening. I am cognizant of that, and I will keep my comments short. I have stood before this group. Oh, sorry.
I know who you are.
Sorry.
but-
Drake Patton, 684 Natick Avenue. I've stood before this body for many years about a different project, the Natick Solar Project. And I bring that up only because what strikes me about this particular piece of land you're considering is how many similarities there are to our project, right down to the speeding and the no through truck signs. But more importantly, we're looking at steep slope, major ledge, considerable wetlands, a public utilities easement, intact forest and wildlife habitat, historic stone walls, and really importantly, what you heard tonight, an existing neighborhood that knows its land, knows its place. They are, as I will always say, the experts. And I believe, Mr. Fries, that you and I agree about that they're the experts. I'm not in opposition to housing on this site at all. In fact, we need housing. I would love to see some affordable housing. I am worried about the plan as it currently exists for all the reasons that these neighbors spoke about tonight. There is not enough information, in my humble opinion, for you to make an estimation of the master plan tonight. I strongly urge you to pump the brakes and to ask for more detail. I know you don't have to, and I know that the developer has produced what you've asked for, but we haven't seen a development like this in our city in decades. And this is one of the last intact pieces of land left. There are so few. The saddest thing about this is we could have acquired this land for very little money and we could have had it in open space. And I hope under the new direction, both in the department and with the commission, that we can work on that. But here we are. This can be a better development than proposed. You know, the open space conversation bothers me because if it's truly open space, one might assume it might be for passive recreation. That has come up tonight.
But if it's mostly wetlands, that starts to be a problem because you can't do both things in the same place. If you look at the map, if you wouldn't mind, Jonas, bringing up the map of the proposed, yeah. So if you look at the lots and the major open space, you will notice that none of the properties can actually access that open space unless they go through other people's yards. And that seems slightly problematic, unless it isn't open space, it isn't passive recreation. Someone smarter than I suggested when looking at this plan that perhaps this development might add some green space that goes around it, which would create lots of opportunity for buffer, for animal passage, et cetera, et cetera. Again, you got to think this through. There are two places marked in the green space that are called conceptual drainage. They are an acre each. Now, I know it's conceptual, but we've all seen a lot of development. So I'm going to assume it's a big old basin. And Jonas, if you wouldn't mind, I'd submitted a photograph. What I'm asking Jonas to pull up is a photograph of the Briarwood Estates. That might not be the right name, but it's off of New London Turnpike and was recently built and has a drainage field in it. I'm hoping you can see, possibly. That particular drainage is just all gravel. And when you drive into the property, so that is their answer to drainage management. That is 1/4 the size of what is proposed, and there are two of them proposed for this property. You will also notice on the main map, I'm sure all of you have, that these sandwich the homes that exist already. How are they going to be managed for stormwater? What happens to them? They're going to look at this, an acre perhaps of this on each side of them, and it's unclear, given where these are located topographically, they're at the top of the property, I'm still confused. So there are many pieces that are not working. There's a lot of clearing, there could be blasting. Again, these are conditions we dealt with at Natick. Very similar sites. The conversation about ledge you've heard tonight, that's real for those of us who are built on ledge. It's not a joke and it's kind of scary. So I'm asking you, I'm not speaking for anyone else and I'm not in the neighborhood, but I have visited the site, which I strongly hope all of you have done. And if you haven't, please do it. Please don't use maps. Please don't use satellites. Walk it in person, know it with your body. That is how we know space. That is how we identify and understand sense of place. Speak with the neighbors. Pump the brakes on this. Ask for more information from these developers. There's nothing wrong with that. This is one of the last places we will be able to work with in Cranston. Thank you.
Next public comment.
Good evening, Douglas Go, 178 Lippert Avenue. I'm just waiting for the plan to come up. That one. I'm just curious, how do you get 44 legal lots out of this plan? It's bisect, there's multiple lots bisected by the 50-foot easement. But you heard tonight, the entire east side is not buildable because of the wetlands and the buffers. By fact, the brook that drains on the east side, according to DM, is a 100-foot buffer. I can't find it anywhere on the plans. That brook drains all the west side of Lippert Ave up to and beyond the Hope Road and Burlingame Lippert intersection. I am very intimately aware of what happens when you clear cut and blast this area. I know DM does their best, but their plans fail. They failed in our neighborhood and they'll probably fail over here too. We're still dealing with flooding issues 7 or 8 years later. As far as the road goes, I would urge you not to vote on anything until they survey that right of way. You can walk out there from the stakes from the ground and see what's gonna happen. There's a certain developer who learned a very expensive lesson when they made plans for the interconnection on Leighton Knight Road. Only to find out, once they surveyed the road, all 90 trees they wanted to cut down around conservation land. So you need to go out there with the stakes in the ground before you get any votes at all in this project. Those are my main basic points. Again, I'd like an explanation from the staff why this plan to be used to develop 44 lots when clearly so many are not buildable. When you're translating lots you can't build on, buildable lots. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comment? Mr. Lima, is there,
Just wanted to mention, I called the Providence Water.
in your name and your address again?
I'm sorry, Kirk Road, 264 Main Street. I had called Providence Water last week and I spoke to an engineer and he told me that they were not to come within 100 feet of that 84-inch main, which feeds all of Rhode Island. He was very specific about that and he said he did talk to the Detroit about that. And I don't see it anywhere on the plan.
Okay, thank you. All right, name and
I'm
address?
going to keep it very short, because a lot of the stuff was already touched on that. I just wanted to retouch on this. I live on 25 Roberts Avenue.
Name and address?
William Hamilton. I live on 25 Roberts Avenue. And Winnie runs directly behind it's parallel behind my house. Once again, that area is completely saturated in water, and that's natural runoff. They had to redo our road a couple of years ago, and it's already deteriorated, which is Roberts Avenue, and everything goes uphill. Our road is already deteriorated where the edges are all falling off because of the water runoff. All of the natural saturation, when you take that away, is just going to run down into Winnie Street. Even if, and it's also going to flood houses that are right there. They're all right next to the roads where they go up. If they divert the water to the sides, it's going to go into my property. It's going to go into the bottom of Winnie Street's property. It's going to go right down the hill into houses that are across Main Street. There's another hill after Main Street. It goes down into a gully, which there are houses in. I'm just worried about flooding. I'm also worried about that whole hill is ledge, like it's been said. But what contingencies are in place if that ledge does shift? Who's going to pay for that? You know, I understand insurances and everything else, but policies get canceled. They don't get paid. Companies go out of business. If my house shifts, who's going to pay for that now? Is there a contingency going to be in place where that's in an account for so many years that gets paid for if that happens? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there any more public comment here in the room? Mr. Lima, is there any public comment online?
There is no public comment online.
I did receive a letter that was handed to me.
And what is the name?
Brooke DeMarchant, 1409 Hope Road,
Was it expressed in support or opposition in general?
opposition.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Okay, before I hear from the applicant, I want to ask the staff or the attorney. I know we have time limits, how many days we have to review a master application. When is the deadline for us to make a decision on this master application?
I don't have that in front of me, but I can double check that.
We need to double check it like right now. Yep. That's 90 days, right? We have? Okay. So that would mean it would be approximately August, mid-August. Further extension, I understand.
Basically, you have time.
Okay. All right, so this, I mean, I want to, let me just start out with this for the applicant. I've heard a lot tonight. I think you've heard a lot as well. That needs to be addressed. I don't know if you want to try to address it right now, you can, okay? But personally, and I only speak for myself, I don't do open meetings. I came in tonight thinking that this is going to probably be a project I would approve, maybe with some conditions. And the one thing that the audience should understand, the public should understand, and we understand, this is a by right proposal. And it's a by right proposal. We have been through this process where we have rejected a by right proposal. It was appealed, and we were not successful in our appeal. Okay, we understand. However, a lot of concerns that a lot of issues have been raised tonight that was not in the staff memo, not in the documents presented to me in the applicant, that me personally, need time to digest and think about whether or not there's things we need to do here before we do master plan approval. My preference is to continue this to another meeting so that I have time for the public to potentially hire an attorney, hire individuals to help present your case and conditions that you want to impose on this project. B, time for myself, the staff, anyone else in the city government to evaluate all this to see what kind of conditions we can impose or consider, and how you also can address those concerns. Some of these things you can probably address pretty easily. Some of them I think are more challenging. I don't continue things like this. Generally, you just vote on it. I think people know that. But that's kind of my feeling right now. But before, I just want to see if my fellow commissioners, if they feel like they want to hear from the applicant and then go right to a vote, we will do that. Or do they rather have this continue to maybe next month and we have more time? So that's why I just want to put on the floor for discussion. Commissioner Renzulli.
Thank you. I tend to agree with President Frias. I'd like a little bit more time. I'd like to take the opportunity. Personally, I've only been on this commission for a couple of months now, and I would like the opportunity to go visit the site myself. I would like to go all the houses that were offered. I'd love to go walk on your trails and see what's going on over there. I do, tend to also want to approve projects if we can, but I think it's in the best interest of everyone to have a good project approved for both the developer and the residents and the future residents, the kids going to the schools, the voters who need to be able to get their ballots. All of that needs to be addressed, but I do think this overall can be a very good project if everyone, works together to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Renzulli. Any other comments from my colleagues?
Thank you. I too agree that there is a lot here. Sometimes it doesn't appear that that's the case. I think that we always benefit, as does an applicant, from hearing from the people who live in an area, because you raise many legitimate issues that should be explored and brought before us. I know that I have other questions about wetland determinations. I think other issues were also brought up, and I'm not going to go through them because we all heard them. I think the applicant knows what they are and we know what they are. But I would agree that if we have 90 days, we should do it in a thoughtful way and in one way.
Any other comments from my colleagues on the possibility of continuing this to another date?
Oh,
Well,
I'm sorry.
are you- are you-
And, I mean, from a legal standpoint, I'd like to see, for instance, the deed into the parcel has parts of Situate and Coventry on the deed that confirm that there aren't any Situate or Coventry that are part of this development. And also more information regarding that easement to the middle lot that runs through the wetland. I think that's something that this board, you know, during your deliberations should consider, and how that's affected. So there's a couple of other kind of title legal issues that I've never seen before. With a lot being in the middle of a development that's not part of the development.
Right. Commissioner Lanfear?
I also think I would be interested in seeing, was there a preliminary determination application made to DEM?
In order to submit a preliminary determination submission to DEM, you have to have full engineering done on the site.
So the reason why I'm asking that is because you provided a traditional layout of houses versus the RPD. And from what a number of people raised this evening, and I think just from our looking at where the wetlands, where you represent that the wetlands exist, because DEM did not do a preliminary determination. Are you certain that that traditional layout is doable? It was presented to us as if this is what traditional would look like. But if you don't have a preliminary determination from DEM yet, how do you know if some of those areas may not be buildable?
So at this time, the wetlands have been flagged by Dupree Engineering's biologist. So they are flagged by a professional. And then when we do submit the engineering for the site, we would get that. They would verify that as well. But I don't personally see concerns, but I can look at that further as well and just make sure that any of the areas maybe have like a little bit of extra area in them per se, to make sure that if any of those wetland lines do slightly shift, which typically we do not find large shifts in wetland during our DEM review. But we can just make sure that we keep that in mind when we leave here today. Thank you.
Make a brief procedure point as to that.
Sure.
I believe in the regulations for the RPD, you do that kind of yield kind of at the pre-app stage, and then you repeat it, I believe, at the preliminary plan stage. So there is some understanding in the regulations themselves that more engineering needs to be done to kind of finalize that plan. So it would be kind of looked at again when you do preliminary based on your own regulations.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I will, as I said earlier, this is a lot of information and a lot of concerns that I'm basically doing three things here: managing, maybe listening, and trying to analyze things very rapidly in my head. Is there any other, excuse me, any other comments from my fellow commissioners or comments or questions they'd like to give to the applicant that they should consider? Because I think we're headed towards continuing this matter. Vice President Coop, do you have something? That's fine. Yeah, before
I would say it's not for them to continue.
No problem. Okay. No motion has been made. But as you can tell from my comments, I'm considering making a motion of, of continuing this until July 1st would be our next meeting. We may actually have to continue it to the August meeting, the way this is a lot of information. But I'd like to hear the applicant. Would you like anything you'd like to say about the possibility of continuing this.
Yes, thank you. We heard all the responses. We understand that, number one, it's within your right with the 90 days to make the decision, but we would be amenable to, not voting tonight and continuing this matter. I'd also state, obviously we have responses to a number of these things. If we continue a meeting, we'll respond to them at that time. But I just want to let the record show that there were things made in public comment we would have things to say about.
That's fair enough. And I also recognize, Vice President Cooper, is that we're under some kind of time constraint here with 10 o'clock. And we have one application, a subdivision, and a couple of zoning things. One last thing before we start doing motions. Like I said earlier to the members of the public, this is a by right. And so you should also be aware, and I heard the comment about housing. We at the local level are now starting to get a lot of push to approve housing everywhere, anywhere, how much you can. I mean, they've set goals in the Department of Housing. I put in comments talking about some of the concerns you've raised in general, not even talking about your project, traffic issues, school issues. There is an impact to housing, but just be aware that there is coming from the state, whether by law or by policy, an immense pressure to improve more housing. And we're now left in this state with basically building on places that were not built before. And these places were not built before because there were issues with those sites before. I'm just trying to tell you, like, as a fact, that the challenges of all of this, trying to make this all work. And I appreciate you all coming out here. And I think there's some things in the laws that are trying to change so that public participation is even reduced. And you see this in some of the laws that are going on, like legislation going on right now. And it's important to have public participation because you get to hear things that, like I said before, people who live in the neighborhood know things that I don't know. But anyway, I think I've already talked to you. So if there's any other motion for a continuance until at least, I'd say July 1st, and then we can probably, if you need more time, we get more time, unless people want to do something. Vice President Coop has made a motion to continue this matter to July 1st meeting. That is the correct date, right? Director Ashman? July 1st? Okay.
Held at City Hall again? Just for
This will be,
everyone's
this will be at City Hall. The elevator is working again. And I hope the air conditioning works too. Seconded by Commissioner Mazzulli. Is there any discussion on this continuance? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you again on July 1st.
Thank you.
We will take a 5-minute break. We don't have that much matters. I know Mr. Capezzo is anxious to be heard, so just give us 5 minutes. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We're reconvening. We have about 1 hour to go through this. Capezza Family Plat. Is the applicant present and wishes to be heard on this matter?
Good evening. We will be brief. This is not a complicated project. For the record, Robert Murray, 21 Garden City Drive in Cranston, representing Nicholas and Cynthia Capezza, the applicants before you for a two-lot subdivision on Leighton Knight Road. I'm going to ask Nick to come up in a moment to speak to you before we get into some of the particulars. In full disclosure, I've known Nick since 7th grade at UB Bain. He was junior high school then. Went to Cranston East together, graduated in the class of 74. I went to Providence College and he decided to go to URI, but we still talk. Not during basketball season, but no. Nick spent 27 years giving honorable service to the citizens of Cranston as the city engineer in the engineering department, retiring as the city engineer a couple of years ago. So he's here tonight as a property owner and a father. He is a professional engineer by trade, but his comments tonight are going to be more personal than professional. This is, as your staff has submitted a memo to you recommending approval. You're here tonight in two purposes. First, under unified development, there is relief required for the approval of this minor subdivision. This is an A80 zone out in Western Cranston, which for many years, when I first started almost 40 years ago, A80 was kind of like a holding zone. And at the time, over the last 4 decades, it's been rezoned as public water and sewer became available, downsized to the A20 zone. In this instance, we're not looking to rezone the property, we're just looking to develop it into 2 single-family lots. Presently, they contain about 129 feet. The lot that he and his wife own contains 129,000 square feet of land, where by right he would need 160. And so he equally divided this property. He'll explain to what his intentions are for his family. But the other relief that we need is in the A80 zone, you're required to have 200 feet of frontage, and each of these lots the lot would be split in half and about 126 feet for each lot. So we have 2 undersized lots with restricted street frontage, and that's the relief that we're looking for in the unified development. With that, I'd like to ask Mr. President to come up and give you some general comments and backgrounds of what his intentions are here, and then we'll finish up with just a couple of technical points.
Good evening, Nick Capezza, 745 Leighton Knight Road. My wife and I have been on Leighton Knight Road since 2001. Previous to that, we lived off Park Avenue and Potter Street. Previous to that, getting married. I myself born in Cranston. Let me just hit upon a couple of technical things. As Mr. Murray said, the proposed lots will be serviced by sewer. We have the letter contained in the application from the sewer department and Peoria Water. Making approval for 2 separate lots, 2 separate tie-ins. The property will be serviced with wells, further classified as hydric, which makes them suitable for private wells. Personally, the lots will be, if approved, will be deeded to 2 of my daughters. One is here now, Victoria. One left earlier with my 2 grandchildren.
for obvious reasons, but my son-in-law Steve is here. Steve and Amanda both own businesses in the city of Cranston, Restore Physical Therapy and Olympia Fitness. They currently live in Cranston. Their family is getting a little too big for their current home, so they wish to build their forever home on this lot. My daughter Victoria, who lives in the city, was educated through the public schools. So is Amanda. She currently is working as a nurse practitioner in the town of Pittsfield. She relocated back to Cranston about a year ago, right before she was married, and currently lives with us, which is really great. She wants her own home. She wants to stay in Cranston, and she'd like to build a house next to her sister. As a family came to this country turn of the century, my grandfather established his roots in Cranston. He worked, saved up money, sent his parents from Italy here. So this lineage goes back to my great-grandparents. He raised 3 children, one being my father. They were educated in Cranston Public Schools. My father raised 2 children, including my sister and myself, educated in Cranston Public Schools. Currently, Amanda with her 2 children plan on educating their 2 siblings in Cranston Public Schools. The intent for Cindy and I for the subdivision is to keep our family in Cranston. We are not developers. We are not here to put money in our pockets. We are here to do something for our children while we can. That's how it's done.
Thank you, Nick. For the record, Nick and Cindy live at 745 Leighton Night Road, which is down the road from this particular lot. Nick, am I correct? You acquired this lot in 2021? And, there is, interesting point when Nick was talking, my office is recently involved in a project in Narragansett, and the Narragansett Comprehensive Plan, somebody was looking for some relief. And one of the things their plan talks about is, the 25 to 40-year-olds having difficulty finding, places to live and stay in Narragansett. And their comp plan actually talks about encouraging housing that, families can stay in Narragansett. And while we don't have that specific language, I was thinking about that issue we just had last week in Narragansett, where there's an analogy that here's an opportunity, even though it's not called out for in Cranston's comp plan, for us to make that desire come true for Nick and Cindy and their family. I don't want to belabor this. I think everybody understands. You can see the map, and I know Jonas can talk a little bit about it, but let me just talk about 2 things. First, obviously under unified development, there are certain standards from that. Nick and Cindy have done nothing to give away any portions of this property. This is what they acquired in 2021. They don't have any other land adjacent to this. They live on Lake Night, which is across the street and down the road. Clearly, and Nick did a good job in his submission package. There is a list of 20 properties he identified out on Lake Night Road, Hope Road, Pippin Orchard, 7 Mile. Now, some of those are beyond the 400-foot radius, but he identified many properties that in the first instance have less than 200 feet of frontage in the A80 zone. These are A80 lots, and with the exception of the 3 or 4, are all, maybe 5, are less than the required 80,000. I grant you many of those houses and lots, pre-existing zoning, but my point is we are not introducing lots into this area of Lake Night Road or Western Cranston. So I think Nick did a good job identifying, bringing those to your attention. Clearly, 2 new homes on this property would, certainly be in character with the general character of the area. And, there is a uniqueness to this property because it only has 129,000 square feet. We're not looking for relief because of general characteristics of the area. And, lastly, the standard of, mere inconvenience that would be suffered by the competitors if this relief is not granted. The purpose of that standard is that, the request denial would deprive them of the reasonable enjoyment of the property for which the use is proposed to be devoted. So if they do not get the relief, they cannot build two homes under the current zone. Lastly, in your staff report, Jonas has done a good job identifying the 5 standards under 4523.6, so I won't repeat them. But we comply with the comp plan, we comply with the zoning ordinance. There are no known environmental impacts at this point, nor will there be a final plan. The lots would have access to the street, and there are no constraints on this property that would prohibit the development. So we're on the clock for 10 o'clock, so I have nothing further. Just currently happy to answer the questions.
Any questions for Mr. Murray? I have just a couple of questions for you, Mr. Murray, that I usually do when it comes to an application. Number one, there are no lots in this within 400 feet that are as small as the lots you're proposing. Why is that irrelevant? Why should we still grant this? Because of the density is consistent with the future land use map?
No, I think there are lots within 400 feet that are smaller than these proposed lots.
When I read in the staff report, on page 4, top of page 4, number 5 says there are 9 lots with single-family homes within 400 feet, all of which are on lots of 8,000 square feet or larger. I know you sent me. I saw the list of other lots within I call Western Cranston that are small.
Well, these are, first of all, if you look at this property on Late Night Road,
yeah,
Mr. has identified 6 properties. One at 157 Late Night Road is 18,000 square feet. 235 and 225 Late Night are approximately the same size as his lots, 61,000 change. I acknowledge that there are 3 lots on Late Night Road which are larger than these lots, but they do not have the required frontage.
Yep.
So this list that Mr. has compiled address those lots on those 4 roads that I identified that have less than either less than 200 feet of frontage or less than the 80,000 required in the AE.
The second question is, unfortunately, the question I asked you, and I say UDR, how is this the applicant not creating his own hardship issue? So it's something that's subject to interpretation, and some people look at it liberally, some people more conservatively, strictly speaking. So how is the applicant not creating his own hardship?
Well, with all due respect, I don't think that's the standard. Okay, I hear that every month from
the lawyers,
from the commissioners,
from
the commissioners, and I look at the standards under Unified Development or under the zoning statute. Nowhere does it. I see the term self-created hardship. Okay, and if it's there, I apologize. But,
all right.
And I suspect if I'm here next month, you'll ask me the same question. I'll keep looking.
Keep looking. It's just a matter of different interpretation. I get it. All right. Is any other questions? Okay. We'll go to staff. Staff, just a quick overview. Then we'll take public comment. And then we'll go through it.
So I showed you aerial photographs while Nick and Mr. Murray was speaking. I think the main point that brought us to a positive recommendation that is that this proposed use is single-family residential and it's consistent with the density in the future land use. So on this case, you'll need to vote the release separately from the subdivision. So, but the release that would be required here is stated here in my recommendation slide. The newly created record lot 1 needs to be granted relief. The lot size is 52,580 square feet and has 126 feet of frontage, where 200 feet is required. Very similar. Lot, slightly different lot size, but there you have it.
Okay. Let's see, any questions for staff at this point? Okay. All right, first, we'll go to public comment. Is there anyone? Okay, Mrs. Zhang?
Hello, good evening. Attorney Tanessa Azar. I represent Lawrence Moses, who lives next to this proposal. His address is at 380 Leighton Knight Road, and he also owns 300 Leighton Knight Road. Just some brief comments. I know you've all heard enough from me earlier, but I do want to make a few points. This is interesting because it's got the variance request here, right? So looking at the standards, we do think that this would change the general character of the area. There is a long listing of non-conforming lots in the vicinity. I'll use that term loosely because some of these lots are over 4,000 feet away from the subject property, just based on a rough calculation on GIS. So all the 7 Mile Road lots that are much smaller are, in my opinion, not in this vicinity to change the character on Leighton Knight Road. On Leighton Knight Road itself, there's much larger lots that are in conformance with the A80. And so allowing this would change the character of this area. Another one is, there's some talk of what is the hardship here, not even whether it was self-created or not. There could be one single family house on this lot as proposed. Is the hardship that you can't have a second? At what point is the hardship that you can't have a third or a fourth? So I'd argue that that's a unique, a way to look at it, that the standard has not been met in that sense. Also, those are the main points. Like I said, that the general area has larger lots. These lots listed on this are quite a distance away. The biggest issue is the lot size rather than the frontage, in our opinion. We wouldn't have a problem with one single family home being on this lot, and that would be allowed by right with no problem. There's no other also unique characteristics of this land as to wetlands or anything else that would, a corner lot, anything that would impact, be allowed. This would essentially create 2 substandard lots where now there's 1 conforming lot. So those are our comments.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this matter? Mr. Lima, is there any public comment online? Oh, wait, there's another person who's gonna make public comment, sorry. Please state your name and address.
My name's Steve Zariello. I live at 55 Normandy Drive currently. I am son-in-law. I am one of the individuals that is planning on building a house on this lot. We obviously have no intention, clearly, of subdividing this any further. Clearly, family is very important to us. My wife and I both own businesses in Cranston. We are very involved with the Cranston public school system. I work with CLCF and with the Cranston East Athletics and Cranston West Athletics. And I think it's very clear what the intent here is, that we want to set up a place for our family to live next to my sister-in-law and her husband, right down the street from my father-in-law and my mother-in-law. They're very involved in helping with our kids. I grew up in the East Bay. Cranston was a world away, and I never thought that I would come to really enjoy living in Cranston. Opened up a business here 15 years ago. And 10 years ago, my wife and I bought our house, and I came to really love the area. So as my father-in-law stated, we're clearly outgrowing our small dwelling right now. It's a perfect starter home for somebody else who wants to either start off in Cranston or move to Cranston. or continue to grow in Cranston as the Capezza family obviously did through years and years. And you know, it would just be a great opportunity for us to stay here because we do need to move out of our current house. We are looking to continue to grow our family, and this provides us an opportunity to do it and stay in Cranston. That being said, I heard there were some concerns about meeting the requirements for some of the what the city requires for the zoning in the areas. That the property right next to the one that we plan on living on, which I believe is owned by Mr. Moses, has been subdivided, and there is also a lot for sale there that has an alternative dwelling as well. So there are plans to have two houses, I believe, on that lot, and I do feel that what we're proposing is not out of character with some of the other spots in the area. And I know that they mentioned the size of the lots. I believe there are a couple very close by. I know they're outside. You just mentioned the 400 feet. I'm not an engineer, and I've never worked in the city, and as my father-in-law has, and taken a look at the flats the way that he has. But from what I did look at, what I did see, it looked like there were a couple that did not meet the requirements that were about 500 feet from the lot that we're proposing being split. So, while they are outside the 400 feet, they're still very close to that 400 feet. I think for us, what it really comes down to is we really just want the opportunity to keep our family in Cranston, be able to stay in the community that we service, and that services our businesses as well. And, it's been great to be a part of this community for as long as we have, and want to continue that. Thank you guys for hearing this out tonight and considering this.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room?
Lawrence Moses, I live at 380 Late Night Road. And, own the property next door at 300 Late Night Road. Recently, we created a new subdivision at 300 Late Night Road. The smallest lot there, and that land abuts the Pennsylvania. The smallest lot is 4.83 acres. All the other lots are 5 acres and above. I'm not against people trying to help their families. Not at all. Okay. I have 3 boys. I feel like I pay for 30, but the reality is that the people who are in these 5-acre lots, they don't have any right to be against what's next door, because the lots aren't yet registered until after we put the road in, and then we go through the sales. But I've talked to a couple of them, and they're not at all happy about the idea that they're building these large homes on expansive pieces of land, believing that they were in an area that's a minimum of 80,000 square feet. And then all of a sudden, they find out that, well, no, it's actually 62,000 square feet. In an area where 200-foot frontage means something to them, because there's a lot of space in between the homes. Just to have next door now to go to 126 feet of frontage or whatever it's. So I need to speak up on behalf of these people. I live on the other side of it. And when I did my administrative subdivision, I created my lot is over 5 acres. And I just believe that it'll be out of character for the area. Clearly within the 400 feet of radius of whatever that we've talked about. Lastly, too late, but I really wish that Mr. Capezza, I assume he's had this in mind for a while, had contacted me and said, Larry, we'd like to, have enough area to put in 2 homes. Because I think he has like 125,000, 126,000 square feet. And we only would have needed another 40-something thousand or 50-something thousand. And if we had sat down and gone over this, we probably could have figured it out. And he could, bought a parcel of our land, added it to his, had 160,000 square feet. And then and being an engineer, he probably could have helped our engineer in the design of the development. I mean, at the end of the day, the development, like I said, the smallest lot in it is 4.83 acres. All the other ones are more than 5 acres. Realistically speaking, what are you talking about? Taking 10,000 square feet out of each one? We could have easily figured it out, but nobody came to me, so I didn't know that this was in the process. Otherwise, I would have offered it to him. But too late now because we've already, done the development.
Any other public comment here in the room? Any public comment online, Mr. Raymer? Okay. The applicant wish to respond at all?
No, I don't, my friend Larry got up and I respect his right to speak. We just note, since I represent somebody who may eventually buy one of his lots, 4 or 5 acre lots do have some wetlands on them, so that, I want to be clear that they're not totally free of buildable land, but he is correct, they are sizable lots. We're a little bit beyond, let's make a deal. I appreciate his offer tonight, but we are.
We can't do a continuance review, huh?
Yeah, no, we'll, this, everybody understands what this is about, and be happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
All right, any questions for the applicant? Okay, staff recommendation. Ms. Ashman, is that on the board here, right? Basically 2 parts, which is 1, to grant the variance, and 2, to grant the subdivision, as recommended by the staff. Mr. Marcel, did I characterize that correctly? The one motion would be to grant the variance as recommended by staff, and the other motion would be to grant the subdivision as granted by staff, as recommended by staff. And if there's a negative, you have to explain why you're not granting the variance. All right, well, this is the moment for discussion or anything motion time, so I just wait for people want to do. Motion made by Commissioner Carrero. Is there a second to Mr. Carrero's? Seconded by Commissioner Mancini. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of granting the variance as requested by Mr. Capezza, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Okay, I think the ayes have it. Second motion time? On subdivision. Motion made to grant staff's finding to approve the subdivision as recommended by staff. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Commissioner Carrero. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Let's move on to, we are next on the agenda.
Let's skip over the ordinance proposals and go straight to zoning board.
Right. The first one is 12 Tacoma Street. Is there anyone here who's representing 12 Tacoma Street? There's a guy in the back. You representing 12 Tacoma Street? Yeah, okay. All right. All right. We'll just go to staff. Could you make a presentation and then we'll take public comment.
Sure. So this application is two lots right next to each other. One is in the C2 zone with neighborhood business. That is the one that has the house on it currently. And the neighboring lot is the A6. They're asking to have relief from the merger provision and also relief from minimum lot size. So they can construct a new single-family dwelling on 4,800 square feet on a substandard lot of record. So here's the GIS. The pink is the neighborhood commercial C2, and you can see how the lots are the same size at 4,800 square feet. They don't meet the test to be exempt from the merger provision, so they're requesting a variance to exempt them from the merger provision. Here's just a photograph of the lot. The lot that's 0 Tacoma Street, where the house would be constructed if this were approved. And here's the site plan showing they meet all the other requirements for frontage and setbacks. No other relief is required. And the resulting density of 7.24 units per acre is within the designated future land use map range. So I recommend approval. It's because they're two separate lots, it would be two separate recommendations, but I'm recommending, I present them together and I recommend them both together.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this zoning recommendation? All right, just a quick question, Director. One lot is D1, the other is C2.
Yeah, I think it's A6 and so it's 6.
Oh, okay. So one is C2, the other is A6.
Correct.
All right, so this on top of page 4 is talking about D1. So I didn't understand.
Oh, is it D1? I misstated it then. It requires 6,000 square feet for a residential lot.
And if you're correct, on page 4, it states at least 50% of the lots in this area are 4,800 square feet or less, right? I'm looking at page 4, bottom half, median lot size of all 34 lots. Right?
Yes, that's what's stated in the.
All right, is there any public comment here which should be heard on this matter? Is there any public comments which should be heard online? Okay, so the staff recommendation is to have a favorable recommendation on 0 Tacoma Street and 12 Tacoma Street. Any discussion? Question? When it be time for a motion? We can make one. Okay, so the people at home who can hear this, Commissioner Renzulli made you didn't speak into the microphone with a video.
Both not in a microphone. I motion to approve both dimensional variances.
All right. You need to go for it? Okay, all right, so just do 0, you did 0,
0 Tacoma Street.
okay. All right, is there a second to that? Second, Commissioner Guerrero, is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Next motion,
Motion to approve 12 Tacoma Street, dimensional variance.
second, who's seconding it? Seconded by Vice President Coop. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Moving on. Okay. Next one is 116 Shaw Ave.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse. I live within the 400-foot notice. So
You are here. Commissioner Lemke is recused. All right, is the applicant here wishes to be heard? Nope. Staff, proceed.
This one will be a very brief one. 116 Shaw Avenue, it's a A6 zone. Project to demolish an existing garage and construct a new garage with the same substandard sidewalk setback, which is 0.9 feet. So it's an expansion. It's a complete demolishment of the structure and then a slight expansion. Here's an aerial view of the lot, just so you can see where that garage is. Images of the garage presented by the applicant. So you can see it's very, very close to the property line. Shown as 0.9 feet away from the property line. This garage they're proposing to remove the garage and then rebuild it on the same footprint, in the same sidewalk setback, and then also create a slightly larger piece in the back, but that wouldn't create any additional setbacks. And because the proposal is just construction, the minor expansion of existing accessory residential use, existing setback, and generally like, and that the structure would also, if you were to build this as a conforming proposal, you would need to set the garage very far back on the property, which would generally just increase impervious surface. And there are also many neighboring properties with similar substandard frontages and garages and sheds that are close to very close to the property lines. And future land use map, it's not really specific on garages, but it's an accessory to a single family residence system. And therefore, we forward a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Is there any public comment here on the garage application? 116 Shaw. Anyone online? Thank you. Are there any questions for staff regarding this application? Seeing none now, this would be the time for motion for a positive recommendation to grant the variance. Yes. This is being recorded tonight. All right, thank you, Vice President Coop. Is there a second? It's a second from Commissioner Renzulli. Any debate? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Next one is 40 Ashley Street. The applicant here and wishes to be heard on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, Robert Murray for the applicant, Robert Moretti. This application, I want to note that this property's been in the Moretti family for many, many decades. Mr. Moretti presently lives in California. His father, in the early '80s, was actually the city clerk for a short time when Mayor Trafficani was in office. I've known the Moretti family for many years. The intention here is there's an existing single-family home on this property that has been put together room by room over years. Mr. Moretti planning on returning to Rhode Island and live with his married sister, who presently lives on Randall Street, Lori Sapola, and the two of them want to build this structure, which, if you've seen the elevation, it's an impressive duplex. There is sufficient land to build 2 single-family homes here. He has 16,800 square feet. Their preference is to build one structure. It would be a duplex, which is not allowed in the AC zone, hence the zoning relief. There is, as I said, there is a existing family house that I'm not even sure is being occupied right now. So it would be raised in the process. I just want to note that, and I'll acknowledge that the predominant land use in this area is single-family homes within 400 feet. There are 14 two-family homes within a 400-foot radius, and on the average lot size for those is about 6,000, almost 7,000 square feet. This lot is 16,000, so we're not trying to put a two-family on a dramatically undersized lot. There's plenty of area. We could do a single family with an ADU. That's not what they prefer to build a nice home. Probably make it a condominium so they each own one half of it, brother and sister. And we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from Mr. Murray regarding this application? Mr. Murray, I have a couple of questions for you, as you imagine. We acknowledge that on my count here, about 80% of the homes in this area are single family, correct?
It might be a little less, but
78.5.
I'll acknowledge your math.
Thank you. It's subject to check is what they do in administrative direction. Thank you. Is it possible that they could actually build 2 single family homes on this lot?
Yes.
This is a use variance, correct?
Yes.
If I may add to that, we presented it as a use variance because it's a two-family dwelling is not an allowed use. It's its own line on the use page. It's the same type of definition of use. We want to put it to us for a use variance to allow a two-family.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I mean, we don't have time for me to disagree.
Yeah.
No, I think you should. I take as much time as necessary to convince Mr. Frias.
I've lost this argument before because the use, it's not an industrial use, it's not a commercial use. And the use is residential. So the request you're making is a number, a figure of 1 to 2. So instead of having a single family.
So when you say you lost this in court,
Well,
I know Mr. Murray would be
because
interested.
for the first 15 years of my land use life, I always considered it use that from a one family to two family. It's the Landry, the father, left. Put the cap on. It is not a use variance. The standard is.
So putting
you should use the dimensional standard.
Okay.
And
Well, they had a positive, I understand, they had a positive recommendation either way.
and make a positive recommendation and all that. So I'll be glad to.
Well, we're making a recommendation to the zoning board, and you can explain to the zoning board that it's not a use variance, it's a dimensional. Okay, so I won't ask you questions on the use variance, and you don't have to answer questions about how there's no use variance standard, right?
When there's wind in the sails, you just let the boat sail on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions from Mr. Murray? Staff recommendation?
Everything about this, they can build 2 conforming single-family houses if it's, they can meet the parking requirements, fits within a future land use map. The only thing that's different here is they want the attached units because that's they want, so they're not increasing density above what's allowed by right. So we recommend a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Any public comment here on this matter? Anyone online who'd like to make public comment? Okay. Any further questions? I'll make my comment. I will not supporting this because it is inconsistent with the character of the area. The character of the area is approximately 80% single family. And under land use goal number 6, we must protect and stabilize existing neighborhoods, putting duplexes, which are going to become rental properties probably, it sounds like to me, because the homeowners are in California. Oh, it's coming to Rhode Island. Okay, I misunderstood. You go back.
Already, because he lives in California, the property, the Malone family's own
Okay.
property, he's moving back to Rhode Island. He's gonna build this. His sister who presently lives on Randall Street is gonna live in the other half.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
No problem. And she'll be at the zoning board. hearing.
I should be able to join the business. In this area?
Yeah.
So for those of you at home who are not hearing this, Commissioner Mancini is indicating to me that within a few hundred feet of this piece of property, there are duplexes or two-family residences, and therefore she's indicating to me that it's I assume you're saying consistent with the local. That immediate vicinity of that. Okay, all right. Okay, well, I got corrected by Mr. Murray here, and Ms. Mancini, who lives in the exact, who is very familiar with the area, is telling me that it's actually more consistent than I expected from looking at the numbers. So, all right, I understand. Any further discussion? All right, then someone can make a motion. Okay, Director Carrera has made a positive recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Renzulli. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. I record myself as in the no. Thank you. This will come up in some other thing. Thank you. All right. We're going to skip Safe Streets for All. No. We want to get out of here. We will. Okay, so 10 of 10. We'll receive an email. We can talk about it in July. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion, Commissioner Renzulli. Okay, hold on. Commissioner Lampier has asked a question before we do this. That do we have a workshop on June 26th? I believe there is one on William Hall Library.
Yes, that's a good thing to bring up.
Okay.
There'll be a plan workshop with a focus on housing and neighborhood safety, neighborhood quality of life. It'll be held. It'll be some of the similar activities that we developed for our Ward 3 meeting, and then we have a citywide focus. It'll be held. Councilwoman Bridget Grasmere hosting and William Hall. I will send you the flyer. It's 6 o'clock, but I just got to. Don't rely on my memory.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Lampier's comment. We were at the motions. There was a second, no debate. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Let's have it. Thank you. See you. Enjoy.